Hello, everyone, again. We are trying another new background today. It's a bit radical compared to my last one, but I'm up for trying new and different things, so why not? This time it's more orientated to growing the movement and recruiting activists. But how are you going to get new activists to a movement without chatting to people, right? So yeah, let's do it. Let's have some conversations, hopefully with people that want to know why they should join the movement. Some comments were filtered. Ooh, that's nasty. That's a bumpy start. It's a bit slow today, but that happens. Usually I don't really have a problem with it picking up steam and getting quite a few viewers in. However, I'm taking a little bit of a risk with this new background. It might throw people off, be a bit confusing, so we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I'm doing my usual format today, which is having people join and talk to me, have conversations with people, answer questions. So answering questions about the pro-extinction movement. It is the movement to end all suffering. We are recruiting new activists, trying to grow the movement. How are we going to end all suffering? Well, we actually have a realistic plan, and that is total extinction. Sounds a bit radical, a bit extreme, but we're facing an extreme problem. And that is how else can you end suffering, prevent suffering, and make sure that no one has a terrible life filled with extreme suffering, a life where they'd be better off not being born. Because basically there is nothing worse than that. It is the ultimate bad thing in the world. And we've actually sort of done the logic on it, done the thinking on it, and effectively it turns out if you want to be a good person, you want to do the right thing, then extinction is the right thing. Now, why is that? Well, it's because essentially those that are suffering are more important than those who aren't suffering. Okay? So those who need help take priority over those who don't need help. And the thing is, suffering is so extreme that it is unacceptable. And especially when, what people are trying to justify suffering with is essentially their privilege. Okay? Why don't you start by minimizing it with charity donations? Because, essentially we are a charity, right? So it wouldn't make sense to give our money to a different organization. And furthermore, there is no other organization trying to end all suffering. So, effectively, this is the most efficient and effective way to minimize suffering. And without a movement to end all suffering, there's always going to be suffering. And that's a really important thing to acknowledge, basically. No other movement or organization or group is actually aiming to end all suffering. So essentially, by default, they're saying that it's okay for some to suffer and others not to, right? Our movement is saying no, nobody deserves to suffer. And the sufferers should take priority over everyone else. Because they actually need the help. They need to not suffer. Those with privilege don't need their privilege, they just want it. They don't actually need it. Like, you don't actually need privilege, but you do need to be safe from suffering. And what's worse than a bit of suffering is, a life of extreme suffering that you never asked for. It is literally the worst thing. And, I challenge everyone in the chat to suggest something that could be worse. Okay, we have our first conversation. Let's get going.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Do you believe in God?
No.
Oh, you do not believe in God. So you're an atheist.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I could never be atheist because I feel like being atheist is very scary in a way because I feel like you like after you pass away, you're pretty much gone forever. Basically, there's no afterlife. I think that is a very scary um but I don't like it. I don't like the thought of being an atheist or anything like that.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I mean, the afterlife is a scary concept and definitely difficult to think about, and it's very scary. Yeah. One way that helps to think about it is that it's the ultimate safety, basically.
Well, so
You rest in peace, right?
yeah. So have you ever did you grow up being in religion?
No, no, my parents aren't religious.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about joining the Mormon LDS church because I
Okay.
feel like it has very truth to it, and yeah. But if you could be a religion, what religion would you be?
Um, yeah, I wouldn't be one. I'd have to see proof, basically. Thanks for coming on. Unfortunately, we're not really here to talk about, favorite religions and things, but I appreciate the sentiment. There is someone else that has requested to join as a guest, so we'll see if they have a bit more of a relevant topic to discuss for what we're here for. Right, so anyone else that wants to join, now is a good time. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just correcting my internet. Right, looks like the queue is still going. Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to take some questions from the comment section. Most charities are minimizing suffering indirectly. Therefore, donating reduces suffering in the short term. And the thing is, the short term is a minority, right? Extinction is about helping the majority. Now, it's not just about that, but technically that is what it does, because the majority of life is in the future. So billions of more years of victims and sufferers, that's a massive population that should be considered, right? And a lot of people say, we shouldn't care about anyone in the future. They don't exist yet. But just because they don't exist yet doesn't mean that they're somehow less deserving of moral consideration. You wouldn't set up terrible conditions for someone to live in just because they haven't been born yet. You wouldn't kick a pregnant woman just because the baby hasn't been born yet. So yeah, no, people in the future absolutely deserve moral consideration, and they are the majority of stakeholders. They are the majority population. We can't affect people in the past. We can't do anything about the past, but we can control the future. So yeah, it's the same as people asking, what if, aren't the people today more important? And the answer is no. Why would people today be more important than the larger population in the future? All right, looking for people to join. That would be great. Interested in having some good conversations on live. So happy to get into some topics, but I'm going to read the chat a little bit, see if there's anything there for now. The will to live is a mortal need. It's kind of, right? But it's more of a survival instinct. And, if you're selfishly wanting to live at the expense of others, then that's wrong, right? Your will to live doesn't have infinite value. It might have some value, sure, but it doesn't have infinite value, and it certainly is less valuable than protecting innocents from extreme suffering. So, if I knew that I could go to heaven, but I had to condemn someone to hell for it, an innocent person, I wouldn't go to heaven, and I wouldn't enjoy that heaven if I did, right? Because it's wrong. So, yeah, essentially, there is no moral way to exploit others. There's no moral way to say that suffering is acceptable. And the thing is, extinction is about protecting every single last victim possible. So we are actually the least discriminatory movement in the world, because we want to help every single last sufferer, to protect them from suffering. And we also want to help the worst sufferers, those that suffer the worst in the entire world. Whereas there is no one else coming to help them, and no one else coming to help them in a realistic way. There's no other movement which says that there should be a zero tolerance policy on allowing others to suffer, to be forced to exist into a life of extreme suffering. There's no other movement that says that. So by default, everyone on the planet is effectively an oppressor. Okay, they're effectively saying that it's our privilege is more important than other fellow life forms being protected from suffering. So it's an extremely selfish and immoral, exploitative system, and there's no way to deny that, right? Most people essentially live in a bubble of the status quo, and they avoid moral obligation, they avoid responsibility, and essentially they bury their head in the sand, and they allow extreme suffering and exploitation to be done for their benefit, and they support it happening. They don't speak out against it. So nobody is really on the right side here. It's an upside down world, an upside down system of morality, where people haven't realized almost what's right and wrong. And essentially continuing the human species at the expense of humans and animals is wrong, right? It's not a automatically good thing. It's not something that is unquestionable or is even good by default. It is just simply inaction, status quo, and survival of the fittest, really. So it's unacceptable, it's wrong. Only extinction can provide a guarantee of no more life forms being forced to exist into a terrible life, one that they would be better off not being born into. Now, essentially, that is kind of one of the core parts of the entire movement and the philosophy behind it. And, you would have to essentially try and convince, if you wanted to persuade us otherwise, you would have to convince us that somehow it's okay to condemn others to suffer for benefit, that it's okay to build some kind of future or utopia on the bones and bodies of tortured children, right? I had people in my stream asking me yesterday, can you prove that it's wrong to for babies to be tortured to death? Can you prove it's wrong? I mean, there's something seriously wrong with these people that have to ask those kind of questions. It should be obvious, right, that allowing or creating suffering is bad and wrong. And, you would have to sort of say that your pleasure outweighed the suffering of the victims, right? That's kind of the closest you could get to trying to cobble together an argument for it. But it's never acceptable. That's not an acceptable moral system in any day-to-day sort of system, right? Exploiting others is inherently wrong. Slavery is inherently wrong, right? So, yeah, there's no excuse for it. That's why you should join the pro-extinction movement, become an activist with us, and help us end suffering. So, by the way, I've still got nobody waiting to debate. So, I am keeping an eye on the queue. Who are these victims you talk about? Good question. But everyone that would be better off not being born, including animals, those are the worst off victims, right? Anyone that has a bad life, a terrible life, and those that have the worst lives, there's definitely many that would be better off not being born, and who being forced to exist and forced into all this extreme suffering is a terrible harm for them, right? The worst harm. In fact, there is no other worse harm than that. Hello,
Hello, James. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not bad, yeah. I just want to say that I do disagree with your movement.
Okay.
Do you not think that suffering is a part of life, just like how joy is a part of life? You have to like take it all as one. Do you know what I mean?
No, no, I don't think that babies being tortured to death is just a part of life or something that's acceptable.
So I can agree with you there, definitely. But when you say suffering, what do you mean by suffering?
Well, I just gave you a good example.
So would you not try to reform that system instead of just being pro-extinctionist?
Yeah, so we've looked into it, and there is no way to end suffering without extinction. It's just impossible.
But I mean, there's different levels of suffering, isn't there? Like, let's say the example you just brought up there is obviously morally wrong, 100%. But let's say that another part of suffering would be like, say, you lose your job or a family member of yours passes away.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can't protect life from the worst suffering without essentially having no life. There is no other way to guarantee safety.
But it's safety's a nuanced term because, like, in my
Safety is
opinion,
not a nuanced term. It's an important thing. It's the most important thing, really. And the people that are against this safety are the privileged ones that say, well, I didn't need that safety. I know others do, but I don't want them to have it, basically.
I just don't think the pro-extinction movement is well, it is a means to an end, obviously, but I think there's so much more important in life than just suffering. You have to take it all as a whole.
But
Just
that's like a slave owner mentality, right? If someone was saying we need to end slavery, which is effectively what we're saying, and you said no, you're being too negative, right? It's an obviously crazy and wrong thing to say, right?
but I think, but in my opinion, you're being too negative. There's
But the
more to
thing
life
is,
than there's
if
more to life than
you
just.
ignore the negativity in life, then you condemn those who are having a negative experience to be ignored and to not be helped.
No, I don't think that's the case.
But that obviously is the case. That's what you're advocating for.
I'm advocating for life. I'm not advocating for suffering. Suffering is
Yeah,
a part of life
imposed life into extreme cruel conditions, right? That's the current system.
to an extent. Yes, to an extent.
I mean, not to an extent, to the majority.
So do you not think it would be easier to reform or scrap the system that we currently have then?
No, it's not about the system, right? It's every single last disease, every last type of cancer, every last natural disaster, every last accident and injury, every last animal eating each other in nature, right? These aren't things that you can just reform. You would need godlike power and to click your fingers, but that doesn't exist. So what does exist is euthanasia, population control. We've already made several species of animals go extinct. It's something that we've been doing for a long time as a species. And, if you said, well, let's put off the extinction for 100 years because we might be able to do it in a different way, then that's unfair to the victims who suffer in the meantime. You're exploiting them. You're essentially using them as slaves and torturing them for benefit. Like, they don't deserve that. You don't get to just exploit others and torture them. It's not acceptable.
Well, I agree, but the example that you used of animals eating each other in nature, I mean, that's happened for millions of years.
Yeah,
Literal millions of years. It's just a part of universal nature.
It's not just a part of that, though, right? It's more than that. It's a tragedy for the individuals.
Well, it's a tragedy for one, but then it's a benefit to another.
But that's not a good thing.
But that's just nature, though. That's how nature works.
What do you mean that's just nature?
Well, if you look at the food cycle, in order for one animal to survive, they need to eat another animal.
But when you
Every
say
animal
that's just
every
nature,
animal has a part.
when you say
in
that's
the
just
ecosystem.
nature, though, you're saying that nature is like unquestionable.
I think, nature is unquestionable.
But we already rally against nature every day. You know, you don't live in nature. We built cities to escape nature. We do deforestation. We spill oil into the oceans, right? So there is no grand respect for nature. You're appealing to something that doesn't even exist.
Do you think you respect nature?
Yeah, more than you, because we actually respect the ones that are suffering inside it instead of glorifying the concept of it at the expense of the victims, which is extremely evil, basically.
Would you consider people and animals as nature?
Everything is nature, right?
Yeah. So by ending all animals or all humans, that goes against nature.
But nature isn't a god, right? You're treating it like it's Jesus or something, okay? Nature is just a word, a concept.
I would say it's one of the closest things we have to God. I think that's a valid.
Okay, well, if your god is torturing babies to death, then you're basically a Satanist, right? We shouldn't use excuses like that to avoid helping those that are suffering.
But you keep using this. You keep referencing this torturing babies to death. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an extremely rare case. Where do you see
No,
this happening?
it's not a rare case. It's actually the majority of what life experiences on this planet.
So which babies are being tortured to death?
Yeah, so in the wild, which is, wild animals are the vast majority of the population on Earth. Over 99% of them die painfully as babies, and usually it's by being eaten alive.
I mean, it's just a part of the natural life cycle.
But it's not just a part of that, is it? It's a cruel thing. It's a terrible thing. It doesn't have to exist. Nature doesn't have needs or desires or wants, right? But the animals living inside it do. Nature doesn't suffer. Nature doesn't feel pain. So you're valuing literally a word over actual living beings who can suffer. So that's like the definition of insanity, basically.
I mean, as I've already said though, suffering is just one aspect of life. There's more to life than just suffering. And
Yeah,
to end all life.
No one's denying that.
Sorry,
but
to end
it's
to end
unacceptable.
all life based on just one small aspect of it, in my
Well,
opinion.
it's not one small aspect of it, because like I said, over 99% of life has a terrible experience and a terrible death. So I don't know where you're getting this small aspect from.
Well, it is just a small aspect.
Well, it's not. I mean, you're effectively trolling at that point. If the vast majority of life is essentially babies being tortured to death, then you're trolling by saying it's a small aspect, right? It might be a small aspect to the oppressors like yourself, but not to the majority of the population. You're victims, basically. So, yeah, it's a very gross position to take, to say that it's just life, right? It's the same thing that slave owners would say, okay? Slavery is just a part of life. Stop complaining about it. I'm not a bad person. I torture slaves to death and stuff, but that's just a part of life. It's something that, oppressors say. It's an excuse, and it doesn't even make sense when they say that's just nature. It's an inherently illogical statement, because it doesn't make sense to say that's just nature. Like, nature doesn't, need to exist. Nature doesn't have desires. So why are you saying that's just nature? It's just you trying to obfuscate and appeal to something random to try and justify suffering. But there is no actual valid justification for allowing suffering, which is why these people have to say crazy things like it's just nature. which again is, the most shallow and weakest argument you could possibly present. Okay, let's have someone else. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, how's it going?
No, pretty good. And how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Okay, so your idea is that we don't need to be here anymore because there's suffering in the world, and to end suffering, we need to end ourselves. Is that
Um,
correct?
no, so we're not advocating for, self-harm or anything like that. Um, we need a strong and healthy humanity going forward as the vehicle for ending and preventing suffering for others, because animals can't do it themselves. So we should have an animal-free planet, ideally a life-free universe. We might be able to do extinction for the universe or some of it. And then finally, humans can have their suffering abolished as well at the end. But as the only ones capable of carrying it out, they have to go last. But again, we're against suicide, individual acts of violence, and things like that.
But isn't there a meaning and purpose for, you know, every animal has their play and their role in nature to be able to provide life and, you know, sustain life for other animals. So, essentially every creation provides a purpose for another creation. So it's actually, in theory, living to support something else.
Right,
So
but
if you
it's the
take
same
something out,
relationship that a rapist has with his victim, right? It's direct exploitation. It's causing extreme suffering for a small amount of pleasure. It's just extremely evil, right?
I don't, I can't follow you on that. I don't understand what you mean.
Well,
That
like you
rape.
said, it's the system we have is about exploitation. One animal gets tortured by another one and eaten alive, right? So that's not a good thing. It doesn't even benefit those the predators because it's not just about eating each other. They have diseases. They have forest fires where they burn to death. They starve to death. They freeze to
But
death.
well, you see, in the beginning when we were in a world created by, you know, it was perfect. We had a perfect place. It was if you believe in the gospel,
Well,
God
no.
created. You
No,
don't?
no,
Okay.
no. No.
Well,
Our movement is atheist, right? We believe in science, in rationality, because that's what the
well,
victims deserve,
let's
right?
just say, hypothetically, let's just borrow an idea that, let's just say, in a hypothetical situation, that you were a believer in Christ, right? And you believer in the creation of a sovereign God that is all knowing, and powerful and simultaneously everywhere at once outside of his creation. So let's just say, in a theory for you, um, he creates a perfect world and a designed world that we can spend with him, but then sin enters into the world through deception and through our own desires of wanting to have more because the grass is always greener on the other side, right? So, I mean, we experience that right now, and
The thing
even
is that
without.
the grass is always greener on the other side thing. It's not a real argument. It's the same argument as people that say that all suffering is because of humans or because of decisions, right? But no, the vast majority of suffering is animals, right? They have the worst conditions. They can't make decisions. They don't have a grass is greener thing. And if they do, then it's going to cause them to, go and eat some other animals and attack some other animals. It's a bad system.
Well, according to, the creation in the gospel of the responsibility that we have over the animals, God gives us dominion over the animals. And through our imperfections and our inheriting sin, the separation from us and God, it curses the ground, it curses man, it curses the division between what God
No, like I
originally
say,
created.
sin is not a real thing, right? You're blaming the victims, basically. Actually, not basically. That's literally what you're doing. You're blaming the victims when actually there's no such thing as free will anyway. Your preferences are down to your genetics and your brain composition and things like that. Sadists, that's down to brain biology. You're making it sound like people can choose to be bad, right? But that's not how it works. It's about your conditions, your environment. It's like dominoes, right?
Well,
There is no such thing as free will. It's just a myth.
so to me, this is from me. Okay, I'm not forcing this on you. But let's say a child, once it comes to the age of like 3, it starts to develop its own, wanting to have more, or slapping another child, or jealous, or it starts developing these feelings of independency, of wanting to have for itself more than the other.
Let's just cut the nonsense, right? We're talking about extreme suffering. We're not talking about some Jesus fantasies, okay? We're dealing with extreme torture, babies being tortured to death, they're born with cancer,
Well, in a world that,
alive as babies, right? So let's focus on the important stuff here, okay?
So
why do
strip
you think
out.
that's
Let's just strip
acceptable?
out. So you're basically saying let's strip away any possibility of a God, because that's too offensive to accept. Right? I mean that's just throwing that would derail your whole theory if there was a God. So let's take the antidote and the antibiotic out. All right, because that's the real poison for you, is having a solution. So you don't.
I'm sorry, Michael, but that's just gibberish, right? It's just nonsense. Not a single thing that you said registered as even remotely intelligent, okay? Just pure nonsense. Like, I'm sorry to call you out, dude, but, like, we're not here to speak about garbage, okay? If you want to go and preach, do it on the street or something, right? We're here to focus on the victims and not to try and ignore them like you were doing, but to talk about, why we should help them, how we can help them, and, essentially, we're not here to talk about Jesus, dude. Like, Jesus! Okay, so we live in a world where the vast majority of life is essentially better off not being born. Okay? So the vast majority of life here are the victims of nature, right? And they're also the victims of people that support this disgusting and cruel system of cruelty and extreme suffering. Those that live the worst lives, who would definitely be better off not being forced to exist by birth and then suffering terribly, they are the most important ones. They are more important than your privilege, right? That's all it is privilege. Your privilege doesn't matter. You don't need it.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. How about yourself?
Decent, thank you.
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that we should celebrate death and mourn birth. A lot of people think the opposite of that, but everybody's got pain and suffering on this earth. No one's without it. Everybody, to the richest guy to the guy that slept under the bridge last night, has got pain and suffering. It don't matter who you are.
Yep.
And I think that's a reflection of why the birth rates are finally coming down. It's because the illusion of this life is coming to a head. I mean, people realize it a lot. I mean, I think that's why even in the dictatorship countries, I think birth rates are even falling. They certainly are in Western civilizations, big time. So I think this is it's a natural process. I mean, you can't.
It's not a natural process, though. Like, the thing is, even if the birth rates go down, you're still going to have religious zealots that have high birth rates. And even if we just accept that the birth rates are going down, you're still going to have some people reproducing. You're going to have some cults. Cults and religions starts to say, okay, let's just go crazy. Everyone have 20 kids. Let's do it. So antinatalism is never going to happen. That humanity is never going to just give up and quietly go into extinction. And that's also not good enough for animals, right? Animals definitely can't do that. So our
Yeah.
movement is for ending all animal suffering and all other life before human suffering, right? So humans have to go last, and we have to stay strong and populous and numerous as a species for the sake of the animals.
Okay.
You know, if we all decided not to have children, right, then 60 years from now, there's going to be care homes full of people with no one to care for them. 90-year-old women with dementia trying to run a care home, basically, and there will only be care homes at that point. It's not going to work, and animals would definitely be screwed and would suffer for billions of more years needlessly, right? We have to do animal extinction. We have to end their suffering.
Oh wow, I didn't know it was going like that. I don't know. I mean, I think we definitely have a conscience, and the animals don't have. I don't think we're on equal playing field.
But even if we have some higher conscious than animals, they still suffer worse than we do. Like, we're in, effectively ivory towers, right? We're in comfortable houses with heating and fridges full of food. We're not being eaten alive and having our eyes ripped out in front of us and stuff like that.
Well, that's the lie we live. I mean, we shouldn't be living like that. I mean, the further we get from nature, the worse off we get as a species. I mean, more technology, the faster the car goes, the faster the airplane, whatever. I mean, we get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, but ultimately it's a drop in the ocean compared to animal suffering. So, the vast majority of the population on Earth, over 99%, are wild animals. And their suffering has effectively been the same throughout history. It's starvation, it's freezing to death, it's being eaten alive by predators, it's having parasites and diseases, and that's never changed. So animal conditions have never really gotten worse, and the vast majority of it is just completely independent from human action. And actually, funnily enough, humans taking up land and doing deforestation reduces wild animal populations. It reduces the forests that they can inhabit and reproduce in, which means that there's going to be fewer wild animals being forced to exist and to suffer, basically. So it's actually a good thing.
Okay. All right, man. Well, good talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
All right.
Right on. All right. Yeah, we're having some good conversations today. Certainly want to have some more conversations. Now, I've got a slightly new background today, doing activism to end all suffering, now recruiting activists. Join the stream and let's chat. Now, it's actually very, very, very difficult to get new activists to our movement, though that is kind of the main thing that we're doing. Like, it's literally the main sort of step one is to grow the movement, but it's exceptionally rare to find activists that will join us. What is an activist? It's anyone that wants to help. It's anyone that agrees that we should have a suffering-free world, and that ending and preventing suffering is more important than the privilege of the lucky ones, and that extinction is the only way to guarantee safety from suffering and from being forced to exist. So it's about preventing billions of years of more victims and suffering, about preventing billions of more years of this unfair system we have of only the lucky ones benefit from being forced to exist, and the unlucky ones get forced into a life of torture and nightmares and hell. It's not fair, it's not right, it's not acceptable. So we have to do total extinction to protect all life from extreme suffering and to protect those that suffer the worst. Those are the ones who need the help the most and can only be helped by extinction. So that's why it is the best movement. So how can I join your movement? So you can Google search Abolish Suffering Discord, and it'll be the first link. You can also go to our website, proextinction.com. You can read all about us there, and at the bottom of the page is all of our contact links, link to Discord, link to our WhatsApp group. You can email us if you really want. You can also message me on TikTok and, ask any questions, or the best thing to do is probably to join the Discord as well, because then you can chat with the entire team. I didn't start this movement. I'm just one activist in the movement. There's lots of us. You can come and chat to us, and it's a community of people as well, doing activism and coming together to end suffering and prevent suffering for the victims. It's a real movement with a real plan, and we have the biggest moral obligation on us. Just think about how many animals will continue to suffer for millions of more years. There is no way to actually improve their conditions significantly, unfortunately. And, even if you could improve their conditions, it's just unnecessary. Every single life that gets born on Earth is just forced into it for no reason. They didn't ask for it, okay? And then the worst off ones get tortured to death, or have an incredibly cruel life that they would have been better off not being forced into. They can't opt out because they have survival instinct, or in the majority of cases, they're children. Most animals that get born on this planet will die as babies or as young children. So, they don't have any sort of control over their lives. They're just babies being tortured to death, effectively. So, it is kind of a revolutionary way to think. But effectively, we are dealing with an animalistic mentality, which is what most people have, which says it's okay for them to be forced to exist. It's okay for them to suffer. We benefit. Others might benefit. So this extremely cruel exploitation is fine, right? But no, it's not fine. That is the dynamic, that is the system that we're dealing with. You have those that are the lucky ones that benefit from being forced to exist, and everyone else is just slaves to the system and to the privileged who are continuing it. If you are forced to exist, if you're born and have an incredibly terrible life, which is extremely common, then it is the ultimate harm. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And most people just sort of strawman it in their head to, everyone's fine, you just need to work hard. But, a baby born with cancer who just, and chronic pain, who then dies, doesn't benefit. They don't have any sort of balance or way to work their way out of their situation. Their life was unnecessary, it was cruel, it was forced upon them, and into essentially unsafe conditions, extremely dangerous conditions, right? And they fell prey to that danger, and it was unnecessary, it was cruel. There's, a baby can't opt out of life, they're just forced into it. And for those that really suffer, it's absolutely cruel and terrible. Then you have people born that, develop depression, chronic pain syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, schizophrenia, all of these terrible things that essentially make their life hell, right? Like an actual hell. There's no escape. And again, for many of them, they have brain damage, physical disabilities that prevent them from being able to opt out. And even if they didn't, the fear and terror of trying to grapple with that decision is a truly horrible thing. Okay, we've got someone coming on.
Yes, hello, sir.
Hi, how's it going? Hello.
Yeah, good. So, I just want to demonstrate how your view is self-defeating, good sir. I would be in favor of it if it wasn't irrational. So, do you accept that in order for you to be an advocate for the pro-extinction movement, that you yourself would have to off yourself?
No.
No, okay, so you're not really an advocate of the pro-extinction movement. So we've clarified that. Also, do you...
Okay. Yeah, again, it's actually very counterproductive for our movement, for any humans to come to harm. The thing is, we need a strong and healthy humanity going forward. It could take hundreds or thousands of years to end all animal suffering, right? That's our mission, it's our purpose, it's our moral obligation. We can't just leave animals to suffer and rot. So if all humans went extinct today, then animals would have no one to help them ever again, and they would just be left to burn and suffer for millions or billions of years. It is the worst thing that could possibly happen to them. And it doesn't make any sense for our activists to do self-harm or encourage self-harm. If we stop existing, then we can't do activism for the movement, we can't spread the message, and effectively we're reducing the chance and efforts for ending all suffering. So anyone suggesting that unaliving yourself is a good thing for extinction is just a complete clown, and they will be replaced by, a Muslim or something, or, any sort of religious person that's having, dozens of kids. You taking yourself out of the equation is probably just a joke to them. It's probably something they laugh about while saying, right, that's time to have another kid. What a fool. He didn't do anything to stop us. So yeah, antinatalism and that silly person that suggested all that, it's not a real plan. It's an extremely ridiculous suggestion, an extremely counterproductive suggestion, and just pure nonsense. So it's effectively trolling. He has put something in the chat though. If all humans stopped existing, there wouldn't be animal suffering. Well, it's the exact opposite, right? You're speaking nonsense. In your head, animals are in some sort of paradise utopia, like Garden of Eve kind of situation. You are crazy then, right? If you don't think animals suffer without humans, then you have to be mentally insane, right? I mean, you would have to be. But that is what we're dealing with. People who are against extinction are mentally insane. That's a fact. We can prove it, as simply as pointing out insane comments like that. You can't make insane comments like that unless you are insane. So, to suggest, again, that animals don't suffer in nature is definitely a sign of a serious mental defect. You should get that checked out. In the meantime, people without mental defects are working on the important stuff in life. We're not developing the new Netflix show. We're spearheading the movement and operation to end all suffering, to protect those who suffer the most from the worst violation possible, right? Again, it is impossible to suggest or to even try to conceptualize of something, anything, that is worse than a life form being forced to exist into a life of extreme suffering and a cruel death. Even if there isn't a cruel death, right? If their life is bad, if their life is terrible, if their life is pure misery, then it's wrong that they were forced into it. And again, you can say that it's not that bad for some of them, but that is optimism bias. So it's much more convenient and comfortable for people to just to completely ignore those that do suffer the worst, and to instead strawman the idea to something more acceptable, right? Like stubbing your toe. But we're not talking about stubbed toes, okay? We're talking about babies in nature having their eyes ripped out, watching their entire families get eaten alive and then getting eaten alive themselves. Diseases, parasites, all of these terrible things. There's so many ways that life is being tortured right now. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going.
Great.
I have a question about your prompt there.
Yeah, go for it.
So would this lead to an antinatalist conclusion?
Well, as I was just saying earlier, we're against antinatalism for now, because if humanity goes extinct, then animals will have no one to help them. It could take hundreds or even thousands of years to have a full animal extinction. And if humanity goes extinct before that, then it's unfair to the animals. They'll keep suffering needlessly and unfairly. So as the only ones capable of doing extinction, we have to go last. So, again, it will probably be quite far in the future, and it might involve some antinatalism, but not for now.
Okay, so the goal is to kill all animals off first.
Euthanize them.
Okay. And then, so after they're all euthanized, we would be against parents bringing children in the world. And then what's after that?
So we need an animal-free planet, and then if we can do the universe or some of the universe, then that would be great as well. And then, so we should do as much of that, investigate it as much as possible, because the universe could be full of life and victims that need our help, just as this planet is. So finally, then it would be humanity. And it's difficult to say what the future is going to look like, 1,000 years from now. But we wouldn't necessarily we wouldn't give the people the freedom to decide whether or not they want to keep reproducing. So we wouldn't give people the freedom to, force another life to exist, unfairly and wrongly, basically. We wouldn't make it a choice, if that makes sense. And ideally, we would have total euthanasia for all of humanity, just because that is the safest way to do it. In terms of, again, not giving them that freedom to continue the cycle of suffering and potentially keep it going for millions of more years. So you do need total extinction in order to guarantee no more life, essentially. As long as life exists, there's always going to be a chance of some form of reproduction.
Okay, so then would you sterilize every human and ban it basically through law, that they would not be able to reproduce? And then after that, you're saying that you would put into law that everyone should be euthanized after that, right? I don't want to straw man your view, right? So that's why I'm asking.
So we actually prefer euthanasia over sterilization. So with animals, for example, it's actually quite bad for their health to be sterilized. It messes with their hormones, it messes with their psychology and their behavior, and it can have very negative effects on them. Plus, it's not just about preventing reproduction. It's about all forms of suffering and protection from it. So non-existence is that ultimate protection, and it's much better than the natural death that the wild animals would have anyway. So, if you're worried about the death, right, they're going to have an extremely terrible death unless we give them euthanasia. Now, again, for humans, we would probably do it for them. It would be cruel to ask them to do it themselves.
Okay, so then what if, they did not want this? Then what? Would it be forced or? Yeah,
so in the same way that the police use force, right? Force is sometimes a necessary thing.
So how do you think that this is logical?
Okay, because nobody deserves to suffer. Suffering is the most important thing and takes priority over everything else. So we have to have a zero tolerance policy on suffering at all costs, because there is no justification. There's nothing that makes up for suffering or justifies it. It's just bad. And at the minute, most life born on Earth is having a terrible life that they'd be much better off not being forced into. And effectively, we have a system where only the very, very lucky ones at the top are benefiting from being forced to exist, whereas everyone else is not benefiting from it. They're babies being tortured to death in most cases. So it's a very cruel system.
So would you see a possibility of suffering being beneficial?
We would say that suffering is only acceptable if it's in pursuit of ending all suffering or ending a greater amount of suffering. If you had to choose between sending 2 people to hell and 1 person to hell, then yeah, you should send the 1 person to hell. It's still a bad thing.
Wait,
but
hold on. Where did we get hell from? Because you obviously, like, you don't follow God, correct?
No, but it's just it's just like a turn of phrase, right?
Okay, so what do you believe in hell? Do you believe hell is a real place?
Not the supernatural version, but I believe that there is effectively hell on earth.
Okay, so then could I ask you what religion you follow?
I'm an atheist.
Atheist, okay. So could I ask you what made you have this insane idea?
I don't think it's insane to say that, those who suffer the worst shouldn't have to suffer that, right? But yeah, it's not my idea. It's a movement that was started about 3 years ago, not by myself. I was just invited to join it. They approached me and said, we have to fight for a suffering-free world. No one deserves to be forced to exist and to suffer. And I said, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Preventing suffering is the most important thing. And, if the only benefit to allowing all this suffering is some shallow privilege and pleasure for selfish people that are happy to condemn others to suffer for their benefit, then yeah, absolutely, total extinction is our moral obligation. It's our moral duty. It's our ethical obligation. Any other position is by default saying that it's acceptable to exploit others for benefit. It's acceptable to condemn innocent life forms to be forced to exist and to suffer terribly and cruel, extremely cruel conditions, and without limit on that. For the benefit of the few, right? So it's not a crazy idea at all.
Well, wait, where do you ground your morals?
Where do you ground your morals?
Yeah, in God.
The idea that it's acceptable to exploit others?
So here's the thing. I ground my morals in God, right?
Right.
So where do you ground your morals?
But I ground my morals in suffering is more important than pleasure. We should protect those that are suffering. We should defend them from it. It's our moral obligation. And
yeah, but that's not telling me.
If your God
hold
is
on,
telling
that's
me
not telling me where you ground your morals from.
Empathy, compassion, rationality. What's the right thing? What's the good thing? What's the best thing for the world? And what's right and wrong. Essentially, we are.
Well,
people
wait. How do you know what's right? Yeah, but how do you know what's right and wrong? Right? How do you know empathy is real? How do you know what right and wrong means?
Well,
I don't understand.
If someone said, I'll give you £1 million or dollars, whatever, but I have to torture some babies to death with a knife, right? Would you say, yeah, great, let's do it?
No, because God says that's wrong.
Okay,
right?
well,
Because that's where I ground my morals from.
It's not
right?
because God says it's wrong, right? So are you telling me that?
Well, is it because James said it's wrong?
Are you seriously?
Is it because?
Are you seriously telling me that?
So
if you weren't
I don't
religious,
understand why would I take your view if you can't ground your morals in anything?
I'm trying to, right? So, but are you seriously telling me that if you weren't religious, you would accept the $1 million?
I don't know. Probably.
So look,
I wouldn't know because God tells me what to do. He's the ultimate authority, right?
You wouldn't know because you don't think for yourself, right? And we live in a world where we have responsibility,
Well,
and you have to
well,
think, right?
James, wait, hold on, James. You know what happens when you think for yourself? You have insane views like yourself.
But I'll tell you what happens if you don't think for yourself. It allows extreme suffering and harm, which is what you're advocating for. So that's worse, right?
What is the argument that
That's
I'm
much
advocating
worse.
for extreme suffering? Go ahead.
You're saying it's fine that babies are being forced to exist and get tortured to death, right?
Wait, when did I say that?
Well, are you in favor of extinction?
No.
Okay, so that's when you said it.
Okay, so I never said that I'm for extreme suffering.
You don't need to say it, right?
Asserted that.
It's not
That was an
comfortable.
assertion.
It's not comfortable for you to say it, but it is what you believe.
Oh, could you define what extreme suffering would be?
I don't need to, right?
So that's a dodge. Okay, so
It's
go ahead
a
and
dodge.
explain?
It's a dodge from yourself, right? You're
No.
asking a very silly question. You can very easily answer that yourself, right?
Do you know what an assertion is? Could you define what an assertion is?
It's like a claim, right?
Okay, so could you substantiate that claim for me?
What, that you're in favor of babies?
Yeah, what's the argument, please? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, okay, well, I don't even need to provide evidence, right?
You do, because you made that claim, right? So
Okay.
you have to substantiate it.
This is the easiest way to substantiate it, okay? I simply have to ask you your opinion, right?
No. You know, I said that I
can just
did
ask your
not agree
opinion.
with
I can
extreme
just ask your
suffering.
opinion.
You said that
so-
I agree with extreme
so
suffering, right?
let's
So you
verify
made
it.
the
Let's-
assertion, you made a claim against me,
yeah,
right?
well,
So
it's
I'm
a
gonna
very-
need that. Yeah, I'm
very
gonna
well
need
backed
that
assertion.
substantiation of that
It's
claim.
a very good assertion, a correct assertion, and all I have to do is ask you, do you think it's acceptable for babies to be tortured to death? And would you support us preventing that from happening, right? And your
See,
answer
I
is
don't
going to
have
be-
I don't have the obligation. I don't have the burden of proof. Okay. You made the assertion that I'm for extreme suffering and baby torture, right? So I'm gonna have to get that argument from you. All right, because I never stated that.
So we live in a world where babies get tortured to death. We can prevent this from happening with extinction, and that's what we should do. Do you agree with that or not? Or do you think it's okay for babies to be tortured to death?
Well, sir, that's another dodge. Okay, so I'm gonna need that argument.
What I'm asking you a question.
How many dodges is it gonna take?
You're gonna have to be more specific then.
Yeah, so you asserted that I'm for child suffering, well, extreme child suffering, okay, and child torture. So, could you explain how I'm for that?
Yeah, I mean, you're willing to say that that's just God's will, right? So something. that probably
Okay, hold
should
on.
be-
When did I say that?
Oh my God, dude! Stop trying to appeal to the past and avoiding the questions I'm asking you. Right? It's pathetic. You're literally just saying like, let's go back 10 minutes and, with a fine comb over some things you said. No, just answer the questions. You're avoiding the questions with saying, no, let's go back into the past and with a fine comb. Let's not do that. Let's just have a normal conversation instead of avoiding the questions. Okay. Hello, how's it going?
Going good, host. How are you?
Great, thank you.
I'm 28 for TikTok terms of services. Um, so I was listening to your conversation with the previous guest, and it seems to be the case that you hold to some sort of harm reduction. Is this true?
Yeah, preventing suffering is more important than protecting privilege.
Preventing suffering is better than protecting privilege.
It's more important, yeah.
More important. Okay, what does this mean?
It means that suffering is more important than pleasure. Those that are suffering need help more than those who are experiencing pleasure and privilege.
Sure, but I'm trying to make the connection, like as far as like your advocacy for extinction and your harm reduction principle.
Yeah, so the thing is, suffering is too extreme and terrible to allow, especially when it's for the shallow privilege of the few, essentially, right? All we really have is a dynamic of the top lucky ones, who are a small minority, exploiting the majority who are suffering and having lives that they would be much better off not being born into.
Sure. I could agree with you that there is a specific group of people that may need to be held more accountable. I don't see how this would follow to extinction though. Like what would be like how does that follow from that statement?
No, it's not that there's a specific group of humans that need to be held accountable. It's all humans, right? Effectively, what we're doing is growing the pro-extinction movement in order to make it possible to achieve total extinction, okay, for animals and all life. And this is the only way to guarantee that no more innocent life forms will be forced to exist into cruel conditions. Their safety is more important than the privilege of the lucky and elite, basically.
And you're talking about the safety of like animals,
All life, including animals.
all life, including animals. Oh, so you're just anti-human.
No, no, I'm saying all life.
So you just want
We
the
don't
extinction of
discriminate
Earth?
at all.
Is
So
well, I don't know if you heard my last question. Are you for the extinction of Earth, like period, or what?
So we need total animal extinction on Earth. Then we need the biggest extinction effort possible for the universe. And finally, human extinction as the last ones to go, because we are the ones that can help other life with extinction.
Okay, what benefit what would this do? Just like the lack of existing would end suffering? Is that basically what your claim is?
It's more about reproduction and life developing and coming about, and preventing that from happening. So by having animal extinction on Earth, we're preventing millions and billions of years of more cruel and terrible suffering for animals that never asked to be born, never asked for this cruel life. It's protecting and defending them from the cruel conditions of the world, essentially.
Interesting. So let me ask you this: how can you protect something from something like this when we already exist?
So we already control animal populations on Earth. It's something we've done since the dawn of humanity, and we do it at a very, very large scale. We control hundreds of billions of animals, right? If not more. So it's something we already do. And yeah, it won't be that hard to have animal extinction on Earth.
Interesting. And what would be the process of like going through this mass extinction or this direct G side, if you will?
Yeah, great question. So we need to remove our dependence on animals on Earth while also removing the animal population. Because if all animals disappeared today, the planet would become uninhabitable. There'd be no pollination, oxygen levels would crash, all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's going to be a very big challenge to make the planet habitable without any animals. But it is our moral obligation, and it doesn't matter how big the challenge is. It is possible to achieve it. We have enough people. We have the science. We have the technology, and we can develop better science and technology. And this is the only thing that it's worth using on. Let me expand on that a little bit. So we favor euthanasia over sterilization. Because most animals are going to have a very cruel death anyway, so we're actually protecting them from that. So it could be some form of gas, it could be something distributed in the water. We don't know. The point of growing the movement and making it possible is so that we can research and develop the best methods.
I see. One sec. I'm having some bad service at the moment. Okay,
No
can you hear me?
worries. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so, um, do you mind if I ask you some I guess let's start here as a baseline. How familiar, excuse me, how familiar are you with philosophy?
I mean, people like myself, we obviously do a lot of thinking. So we have our own philosophy in that sense, but we do not rely on the philosophy of others, Nietzsche and stuff. We actually think that all philosophy is kind of useless. It's a waste of time. If it's not um, going to benefit the world, or if it's not focused, suffering focused ethics and stuff like that, then it's just like it's nothing, right? It's a waste of time.
Interesting. So would you say that you're are you familiar with like any sort of like moral frameworks, like moral realism, anti-moral realism, nihilism, things of this nature? Are you familiar with these terms?
Yeah, I'm not like as familiar as I could be, but I'm relatively familiar. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So would you say you're a nihilist? Like, do you believe that a moral truth exists?
Um, so I've never really been into nihilism or anything like that. But I will tell you that we don't believe in some sort of magical meaning that somehow justifies babies being tortured to death. Okay, so
Sure, sure, sure.
for
Yeah.
us, it's focusing on helping others, basically.
Right, right, right. No, yeah, no. Whenever I was asking you, like, there are some atheists who also hold to like moral objectivism. They just hold it into like natural law theory or something like this. Um, I was just wondering if you believe that there was a moral objective standard, or if you believe that morals were subjective.
It's a good question. It's effectively objective, and the thing is, you can actually prove it because yeah, within a rational framework, it is objectively true, right? It is objectively true that it's bad to make others suffer for your benefit because it's obvious, right? The thing is, we don't
Okay,
have to rely on elaborate philosophies and difficult to read philosophy books because we're dealing with simple truths here, simple morality, which is simply true, which is yeah, it's bad if a child gets tortured to death, it's wrong if it happens, and effectively the only dynamic we have that's in contention is it wrong if someone suffers terribly so that I can benefit? That is the question that people are struggling to grapple with. So
sure.
it's kind of getting people to deal, to face and confront these questions. And when you sort of really put it to them like that, it virtually becomes objective morality because there is no way to disagree with it. Okay.
How do you come to an objective moral conclusion through rationale?
Well, yeah,
Sorry.
basically, um, it takes a lot of thinking about it and doing philosophy in your head. So earlier our last guest was saying I don't like to think, I just read the Bible. And I was like, ugh, cringe. And then but you also have people saying I don't like to think, I read philosophy books. Okay, so that's just as bad. You have to think for yourself, and the status quo and the reading material out there, the Bible and stuff, it is written by immoral people that support exploitation and slavery and terrible things like that. So it's actually very simple morality. It is wrong to take advantage of others. It's wrong to make others suffer for your benefit. And ultimately, you don't need to exist. You don't need to live. You just want to, right? You just want to cling on to the pleasures, the shallow, fleeting pleasures. But they don't,
Sure.
they're not more important than protecting the
The
innocents from extreme suffering.
Sure. The contention that I come to is so I would agree with you that there is an objective moral standard. However, it seems to be the case that, so like what I would take objective to mean would be like mind independence, right? So it would be something that would be relevant regardless if we were here to discover it or not. So when you say that there is a such thing as a moral objective standard, and you say that this is something that is within your own mind, your own rationale that you have to think about, it would appear that that would be a contradiction. So I was wondering if you could parse that out for me a little bit more. How do you come to a mind independent moral objective standard by using the mind to rationalize it?
Absolutely. So I think it really comes down to it really requires thinking about the greater good. So most people trying to understand morality and objective morality and stuff like that, they're thinking from a very different perspective, which actually impedes them from understanding the truth. So they're thinking from a selfish kind of, and I'm not calling it selfish to be mean, but like you're thinking about yourself kind of thing, right? So what we've done is think about what's best for the world, what's best for others, right? It's not about how should I behave within this system. It's about, is the system acceptable? Do I need to do something to help the system? Do we need to change the system? And that essentially gets you thinking about what is right and what's wrong. But effectively, you probably won't have any serious or effective thoughts on this topic unless you are genuinely thinking what's best for the world. Now, I started doing that many years ago before I joined the pro-extinction movement, because I realized that all of these political parties were ineffective, they were corrupt. None of them even proposed anything like, let's end all war, let's have world peace. None of them even proposed anything like that. So I was like, this is rubbish, this is nonsense. And I actually started a movement which didn't go anywhere, like at all, for kind of like a utopia, basically, right? We should have world peace, why spend all this money on the military? Now, again, it didn't go anywhere, so I kind of just parked it. Then the pro-extinction movement reached out to me a few years later, and I totally agreed with it, and I agreed with it much more than my original kind of thinking from before. Because even in a utopia, if you still have life going, then you're still having victims forced to exist and to suffer, right? Or the risk thereof. You can still have a baby born with a disease that suffers terribly and then dies, right? There's no way to guarantee that will never happen without extinction, right? There's no way to guarantee that your child isn't going to be kidnapped and tortured to death or something terrible like that. It does happen. It literally happens, right? So the same freedom that people glorify is actually freedom to cause and allow suffering.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm just going to make a couple of observations and then we can kind of go from there. So it seems to be the case that you may hold to some sort of utility framework. I wouldn't necessarily say like a full utilitarian, but you obviously have a harm that you hold to that you think is bad. You think that there's a benefit that we should get, that we should work towards, and you have a means to progress towards this good, right? So which that means would be extinction, or basically G-side. How is it the case that G-side isn't necessarily the greatest harm that you could do? How does that not contradict your harm principle here?
Well, firstly, it's euthanasia or extinction. Okay, that's the sort of terminology that we're dealing with. And secondly, it's impossible to cause more harm with extinction than you prevent.
It's impossible to cause more harm with extinction than you prevent.
Yeah, we have billions of years of suffering on the line, right? That's an insane amount of suffering. So even if you had to torture every human for 1,000 years on Earth, technically it's still better than the alternative, if that were to cause total extinction.
Interesting. So would this just be based off of like something that you in this pro extinction group have basically come to an agreement on as what y'all would consider would be the greatest the 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 best thing for the world here?
It's objectively the right thing to do. There is no acceptable or good system that allows extreme suffering and children to be tortured to death, right? It's never going to be okay. And it is a system of oppression and the lucky ones exploiting the unlucky ones, right? It's not a good thing. It's not an acceptable thing. People try to twist that into something acceptable, but it's at the expense of the victims, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, to answer your question, everyone that has joined the movement took very little convincing. I myself, when they invited me, all they had to say was, "We're the movement to end all suffering. We're actually, we have a realistic plan. We're going to do it. There's no other movement that you can join trying to do the best thing for the world, the right thing for the world, and to have a zero tolerance policy on suffering and victims, right? We have our current system does not have a zero tolerance policy on exploiting others and victimization and suffering. Even if you have all of the laws in the world, but you still have freedom, you can still go out and attack someone or kidnap an animal, whatever. Right? That freedom causes harm.
Let me ask you this: how many people are within your movement?
We have
roughly
about maybe 15, 20 people.
15, 20 people. Okay, so let's just say hypothetically that I came up with a group of people, and let's just say that this particular group of people had more explanatory power for the things that they believed were correct for society and the world. And they believed that they had so much explanatory power that to them those morals became objective. And let's just say that they had the power or the might to do exactly the things that you would find contradictory. How would you say that they're wrong, and how would you ground that outside of might makes right?
So you're going to have to explain a little bit more about what exactly the scenario is. So you have a group
Yeah.
that's...
So basically what I'm saying is it seems to be the case that through your movement, you're saying that the pro-extinction movement would basically force a G-side among the planet, first getting rid of the animals and the plants, and then the humans would go last. You would force euthanasia over sterilization because you ultimately think that extinction would be better off than prolonged suffering. With that being said, this would be an aspect of what we would consider force doctrine. Force doctrine means might makes right. Whoever has a monopoly on force decides what goes on in the world. So therefore, um, all I'm saying is the point of the hypothetical that I posed to you is that if I were to hypothetically speaking, in a logical world, if there were a group of people who opposed your worldview and they just happen to be more powerful than you, who would you to say that they're wrong when they're using the same kind of exploits that you're claiming to try to stop?
That's a great question, and I have a great answer for it, which is that we don't actually use might makes right. Now, we may have to resort to that, but the thing is that we're actually a rationalist and a rational movement. So our entire position is based on logic and reason, right? So if that other group, we would challenge them to a debate, right? And we would absolutely destroy them. And, there would be no question whether or not they, had any sort of moral high ground whatsoever. And
Interesting.
that's what we do in every debate, because we are right. No one has been able to convince us that it's acceptable to torture babies to death.
Interesting. I mean, I just want to make this clear. It seems to be the case. Like I get where you're coming from, how you believe that this is a rational, justified belief. There are a lot of different people in here who I think who oppose that particular belief. Maybe it is the case that maybe there's just not enough explanatory power in order to motivate or adopt the view. But I'm happy that me and you were able to have this conversation. I do think that it is possible. and I'd be willing to have a conversation with you on a later date on this. I do think it's possible that you do hold to some inconsistencies or some contradictions.
Yeah, we're
But
always happy to do debates, and we're always happy to schedule debates. Now, we started off doing debates on YouTube, so those were scheduled and they were, planned in advance, and they usually go on for like an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. So if that's something you want to do, you want to have a deep dive debate with us, we're more than happy to do that. And you can contact us about it. The best place would be message me on Discord, or even better, join our Discord. Message me on TikTok or join our Discord. Google Abolish Suffering Discord, and you can find it. It'll be the first link. Or you can go on our website, proextinction.com. The link to our Discord is there, along with more information about our movement.
okay, thank you, brother.
Thanks for coming on. All right. We've got some more people waiting. Let's jump right in. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So you've talked about harm reduction. Specifically, what species are you talking about wishing to make extinct?
All species.
So how does that how is that morally better for quote unquote the world?
Because it essentially gets us to a suffering-free world, a victim-free world, no one being tortured, and everyone being safe from forced existence into a life they didn't want, and extreme suffering, right? So,
Force? That's rather presumptuous.
well, I think nobody asked to be born, right? So yeah,
No,
everyone
that's not
gets
true.
forced. Sorry?
That's not true. I certainly did.
Okay. But most people don't.
That's what you believe, yes.
Do you have any evidence that people have a loading screen before birth saying continue or cancel?
Yeah, the literally millions of stories of reincarnation from people all over the world.
Which have never been proven to be scientifically, provable, right?
Sure, in a very very strict sense. However, there are stories from all over the world where people have tons of evidence to prove that they were reincarnated.
Yeah, well, if you find some real evidence for that, let us know. Until then, we have to, proceed on the basis that it's not real. Hello, Bonus. How's it going?
Hello, James. Now, what's happened to you to believe in this, mate? What's happened in your life? What's gone wrong?
Nothing went wrong. I'd say it went very right to be on the right side of history.
History. We talk about the future, but why would you want pro-extinction, man? Why would you want to destroy everything?
Yeah, it's to protect
Has
those.
your girlfriend dumped you?
No,
Has your girlfriend dumped you? What's happened, man? Come on.
no. The thing is, it's about compassion, right? It's about responsibility. There's no need for life to exist, and only the lucky ones benefit from being forced to exist, right?
No. We all no. Do you believe in the game? Do you believe in the game?
In what?
The game of life. Do you believe in the game?
No.
That, all right, fair enough. You don't believe in that. You don't. But what? But like, have you ever had an STD?
No.
Okay, so fair, it's not that then. You've not been dumped recently. Have you lost a girlfriend to a love?
I've got a girlfriend and it's going great. But your pathetic attempts to disparage me, well, I mean, it was kind of funny for a while, I guess. But do better, man. The thing is, people struggle to argue against extinctionism. And they just get offensive, they start insulting you. No, I appreciate the banter and all. But, ultimately, I do want to have some serious conversations, right? We can't have banter all day. And if someone does want banter all day on the channel, at least make sure it's good banter, and then we can talk, all right? So the queue is currently empty, which means it's time for another monologue, which I know you guys love more than anything, okay? So look at all these pretty animals around me, all these cute little baby animals. Would you want them to be tortured to death? hopefully you would say no. The only way to guarantee safety from that is with extinction. It's not a fantasy, it's not a crazy idea, it's a moral obligation, a moral necessity. The thing is, life and the existence of life, it came about because of nature. There was no sort of morality or responsibility that went into the decision and the process that created all of these life forms, okay? And that lack of responsibility, that lack of any sort of oversight, essentially means that they all get tortured to death in the majority of cases. The ones that we see are just the lucky ones who didn't die as children, whereas over 99.9% of wild animals that are born in nature die painfully as babies and children. That's a fact. You just happen to see the lucky ones, right? Just as with humans, we only hear from the lucky ones, right? You don't get people with brain damage or severe mental illnesses going on TV and having their opinions heard, or people with extreme depression. They're just ignored, they're downplayed, and people excuse and justify their suffering, which they never asked for, as it's just life. Which translation is, well, it's not my problem, so deal with it, right? So it's a system of exploitation, cruelty, oppression, fascism, if you want. It's evil, right? Nobody should have to suffer, and if we're saying that it's acceptable for some to suffer, then you're evil, basically. You're exploiting others. And yeah, people ask me all the time, is it wrong to rely on babies being tortured to death? Can you prove it's wrong? I shouldn't have to prove it's wrong. Okay, I can prove it's wrong, but I shouldn't have to. And if you're asking me that, then there's something seriously wrong with you. If you really need any sort of help to understand that babies being tortured to death is a bad thing, then there's something seriously wrong with you. And if you need any help to understand that it's unacceptable, especially when the only counter-argument is, what about my privilege, right? That's not a counter-argument, it's not a justification. So the pro-extinction movement is for helping those that suffer the most, okay? It's for the worst victims in the world who everyone else is condemning to suffering, condemning to be tortured to death, okay? You can't deny that in this world there are many who would have been better off not being born, okay? That's an undeniable fact. So if you say that, they deserve to suffer like that, then you are an oppressor. You are saying that your privilege justifies them, these children being tortured and abused, right? Your privilege isn't worth that, okay? I couldn't go to heaven, again, we're atheists, but in terms of turn of phrase and expressions, okay, we don't actually believe in heaven. But I couldn't go to heaven knowing that it meant someone else went to hell, okay? An innocent person went to hell, right? I wouldn't be able to enjoy the heaven, and it would just be wrong anyway. Like, it's obviously cruel. I wouldn't take $1 million if it meant some babies have to get tortured to death, okay? That's obviously wrong. It should be obvious that it's wrong, that it's evil, that it's bad, okay? But that is the world we live in, and it doesn't have to be that way. We can say no one deserves to be born and to suffer an extremely terrible life, okay? And that those are the worst off on the planet, the worst off in existence, and the most needing of help and safety, right? So, the alternative is to say, no, my privilege justifies these innocents being tortured and imprisoned in a life of extreme cruelty and nightmares that I don't have to face, but they can face it, just so that I can keep watching Netflix, right? It's oppression for extremely shallow benefit at the extremely profound cost of the victims. Okay, if you think it's okay for any life to be born that they obviously didn't ask for, and to suffer an extraordinarily cruel life, then you're a bad person. Effectively, you agree with exploitation. You agree with you essentially have no morality. Okay, zero morality, basically, right? How can you say that you have any form of morality if you're happy for the majority of life born on this planet to be tortured to death as babies for the sake of a very, very small minority who are at the top? You can't. There is no moral way to go about that. And the only moral thing is a zero tolerance policy on extreme victims, forced existence into a life you didn't want and didn't ask for. And essentially, it is a moral thing, right? If you want to be a good person, you should be against all of this stuff, not defending it, not downplaying it, not saying it's just survival of the fittest, it's just nature. That's the same thing that slave owners would say. It's just survival of the fittest. It's just the way the world is. It's just life, right? So these are all excuses for evil people to excuse and defend suffering, right? If someone is torturing you in a dungeon, yeah, they're going to say, it's just life, this is just the way it is, get used to it. But if those words are coming out of your mouth, then yeah, you probably would have been a slave owner back in the day. You probably would have been a sadist, right? Maybe you are a sadist. In fact, you have so many people coming on the stream glorifying suffering, saying it's beautiful, right? So they're effectively sadistic. Instead, they should be empathetic, saying suffering is ugly, suffering is horrible, suffering is terrible, it's unacceptable. Those that don't benefit from any kind of suffering and just have a cruel and terrible life, a cruel death, it's terrible, it's unacceptable. They're suffering more than anyone else, they need help, they should take priority. Instead, you have people saying, let them suffer, forget them, ignore them. It's obviously wrong. All right, we have Stodge. No, it didn't work. Maybe try again, Stodgil. The queue is currently empty, so we're going to take some questions. What are your thoughts on Buddhism? I don't like Buddhism. I don't think it's a real thing, really. It's just a fantasy. Animals can't be Buddhists. Human babies can't be Buddhists. Human children, most of them can't be Buddhists. Mentally ill people, brain damaged people can't be Buddhists. So, opting out, Buddhism, all of these things, they only benefit a very small minority. People just ignore the vast majority who are suffering. If you want to face reality, over 99.9% of life born on this planet gets a bad life, a really bad life. Would you want to be born as a wild animal in nature? Would you want to be born as a mosquito? You definitely wouldn't, right? You definitely wouldn't. You're born with no safety, extreme weather conditions, extreme cold, parasites, diseases, no medicine, no secure food, right? No fridge, no oven, okay? You have to go and kill other animals or be killed yourself. You're running for your life from murderous animals all day, every day. If you've ever had a dream where you were chased by a murderer, okay? It's a nightmare, right? It can be really terrifying. Animals have to go through that, every single day, all day, right? That's why cats and, your average animal, they're terrified of humans because they know that we can just grab them and torture them to death and eat them alive. And that is the way the world works, right? It's not a fringe, small, uncommon occurrence. Most animals are just food on legs. Okay, so it's obvious when you think about it like that, right? That most animals in the wild get eaten alive. And which are the easier ones to do? It's the babies, okay? So most life born on this planet will get eaten alive as a baby or a young child. It's not something you would want to experience. It's not something you would condemn your mother to experience, right? It's just an all-out terrible thing and unacceptable.
Yeah, it's the stupidest thing I ever heard, bro. You know, do you actually know what?
I think your comment was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You know? We can all play games, right? I can play games too. I'm actually pretty good at squash. Okay, let's have the next. Hello.
Yo, hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. How's it going?
I think you're lagging because it shows your like lips moving, but then the sound comes in like 5 minutes later. But anyways, so the pro-extinction movement, you mean isn't like the humans should all just be gone?
No, it's all life. So animals, potential life in space, and then finally humans, because we're the only ones that can cause extinction.
Okay, I have an idea. Now I need you to hear me out for this one though. You're really thinking. I see your face. I could tell you're really thinking about this one,
Getting
right?
prepared for trolling, potential trolling.
Okay, so how about this? You start, and then we'll all follow you, bro.
Okay. I had a feeling there was some trolling coming. My intuition was correct. Next caller, please.
You know, Allah is just gonna reset the universe, and then all animals won't have to suffer anymore, right? But what you're arguing for is antinatalism. You want to step into people's lives and force them to abort their kid or euthanize people because you just want attention. You don't actually believe this. You don't actually believe what you...
I mean, we do. You know, it's not... people find it difficult to believe that we believe what we're saying, okay, at the pro-extinction movement. But, you know, is it really that difficult to believe? We're saying that those that suffer the worst in the world, right, which is, you know, we're talking about the actual worst off, right? And, you know, if you're going all the way down the spectrum to find those that are really the worst off, it's pretty extreme, okay? It's really extreme. So wanting to defend victims from that unbelievably extreme suffering as the priority over privileged, selfish people that are happy to condemn them to that suffering, it's not a crazy thing, right? That's a perfectly logical position. And, you know, I would say that it's irrational to sort of have a mindset of it being acceptable to exploit others and, you know, not having moral obligation at the expense of others, right? You know, if you walk down the street and see a sadist kicking a cat or something, right? Hopefully you would say, yeah, I'm gonna do something to help. This is bad. This is wrong. Okay, so you know, extinctionism is really not that far from being the same thing. It's about saying these victims don't deserve to suffer, and we should make sure that they don't. Is that really that crazy? You know, we actually live in a crazy world. Okay, if you lived in nature, it would be a very crazy world. You've got, you know, no clothes on, so you're standing on stones and sticks are cutting through you all the time. You're starving to death. You're being chased by wolves all day, every day that want to eat you alive. You know, that's obviously a crazy world. And then the human world is also completely crazy. You know, you have wars, you have dictators, racism, sexism, violence, all forms of exploitation, child labor, you know, babies born with brain cancer and, dying at an early age after just miserable, intense suffering. That's crazy, okay? And, what is the non-crazy part about this that people are valuing? It's their privilege. It's the beauty in life. It's that occasional moment we find, we smile or something. They're prioritizing such shallow, meaningless, and worthless things like that over protecting innocence from being tortured and from extreme suffering, from having a life imposed onto them that they never wanted, never asked for, and they just suffer from, right? It's the ultimate harm. It's the worst harm. It's the most evil thing. There is nothing worse in the world than forcing other lives to exist for your benefit into a life of extreme cruelty. And again, many of them, if not the majority of them, their life is so extremely bad that there's no question about whether or not they'd be better off not being born. Okay? A baby that gets tortured to death, right, definitely would have been better off not experiencing that. It's the experience of that extreme suffering that is so terrible and, outrageously bad and just insanely unacceptable. And to say that, no, we can accept that because we benefit from it, is just evil, okay? You don't need it. You don't need them to suffer. You just want them to suffer for your benefit, right? It's just so obviously wrong, immoral, unacceptable, and we should all fight against it. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing okay.
Great.
Yeah, I'm just mostly curious about your. You said that the suffering is unacceptable. Unacceptable to who?
So it's unacceptable to the victims of the suffering, and also to empathetic people like in our movement.
So, doesn't that kind of assume a privileged position?
I would say anyone willing to condemn others to suffer for their benefit is in a very privileged condition.
Okay, but I'm saying like you're kind of assuming the responsibility of like God in this sense, where you're saying, well, suffering shouldn't exist according to who? According to you.
It's not really godlike authority. The thing is, right, the world has always been run by leaders. There's always been world leaders, right? Whether it's dictators or presidents, new laws always come into effect, right? It's the world has always been run and controlled and, supervised, right? So
I mean, so what? But they're supervised under the conditions of humanity.
The extinction is the civilized thing to do, right? As humans, we've climbed out of caves, started building houses, and started educating ourselves and reading and going to university. And the conclusion of that is that it's wrong to allow and exploit others and their suffering, right?
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that suffering has no dialectical benefit, right?
Suffering, the suffering, yeah, but again, you're talking about exploitation, right? You're saying I benefit from their suffering. So,
well, do you think that do you believe that there is any real joy or truth in the world? Like there's suffering on one hand of reality of existence, and then there is joy on the other hand. I feel like you're taking an undialectical approach to the nature of suffering.
It's a perfectly dialectical approach, actually.
All right, well, suffering is on one hand, so it's a pure negation, is what you're proposing.
I think you're struggling to use logic and you're kind of blinded by some balance here, right? But there is no balance, okay?
According to you.
Well, no. The balance objectively doesn't exist, okay?
According to you, it doesn't exist, right? Like, this is just your opinion.
Well, no, it's not just my opinion, right? It's a fact.
Are you aware of the alternative argument to this? Like, it doesn't seem like you're taking seriously the alternative, which is that human suffering or the suffering of nature gives rise to a deeper and more meaningful existence. The idea of meaning being exquisitely or exclusively human, a qualitative approach of humanity. So you're negating this, in my opinion.
You don't realize what you're doing, but you're advocating for a system where a small minority benefits from exploiting the vast majority.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean capitalism as a mode of production, or humanity's qualitative distinction amongst the animal kingdom?
Yeah, I'd say life on this planet has always operated in that way. It's always been an unfair, cruel system and dynamic of exploitation and extreme suffering, extreme exploitation. Okay, so
and you see no positive change. Well, that's not always the qualia of suffering has been alleviated over time. Wouldn't you agree?
No. Wild animals, who are the majority population on this planet, their suffering has never changed over time.
Do you agree with the notion that humanity is qualitatively distinct from animal?
We're more developed.
Well, it's not as simple. That's why I said, like the difference between quantity and quality. A quantitative argument would basically say that humanity is simply a different measure of like animal sentience, right? A qualitative distinction would be that humanity has achieved something qualitatively distinct from animals, just like, a cow is qualitatively distinct from a grain of a wheat plant.
Exploiting babies being tortured to death is acceptable.
I'm saying that, we can get to that in a second, but I'm trying to hammer down, do you think that there is a qualitative distinction between man and nature? Or man and animal, sorry.
If you want to talk about some differences, we can get into them.
Okay, I am saying that there is a qualitative, not quantitative distinction.
I wouldn't limit myself to something, nonsensical like that, right?
Why is that nonsensical? Because this is what Hegel argues.
You're putting a filter on the logic here, right? You're narrowing the logic by saying, let's not have a wide net, let's have a very narrow net, right? So if you want to discuss...
How could you get more wide than there are categorizations?
Then we can do it. Sorry. We don't have to use, useless philosophy terms.
Okay, you think that there's uselessness in describing a key differential between quantity and quality?
You haven't described anything.
Well, because I'm trying to predicate the argument based on, you're talking about the whole of suffering, right? Well, hold on. You're talking about the whole of suffering, right? And in my opinion, my position is that I think that you are flattening the existence of all life in living nature as some sort of qualitatively identical position. Man, animal, any sort of life that there is like does a wheat this makes the argument very difficult from your position, where it's like, does a wheat plant suffer when it is cultivated? In my position, I would say that humanity has a qualitatively distinct position in that its own subjectivity and sentience is qualitatively distinct from animals, from even the most intelligent of the animal world, and that you have to posit your idea of suffering based on fundamentally this qualitative distinction.
I hope that sounded smart in your head. But
do you think that animals have the same ability?
It was gibberish, right? I'm just going to point that out. Like, it was just gibberish. If you want to say, do you think there's any significant differences between humans and animals, just ask it, right? You don't have to waste 10 minutes of everyone's time. Hello.
Hello. I find this to be a really interesting thought experiment, but I have no idea if you're serious. So I'm going to approach it as if you have these honest held beliefs, right?
Yeah, it's a serious movement. I didn't start it. There's lots of activists. It's a growing movement. It's a real movement.
Okay. So your focus is on the elimination of suffering.
Yeah.
Regardless of if people would be willing to undertake whatever your solution to that suffering is.
But you see, total agreement has never been a way that the world has worked.
And you categorize anyone who
So it's an
doesn't
unfair
agree.
standard, right?
Yeah, so you're saying that anyone who doesn't agree with the pro-extinction movement is essentially evil for allowing the suffering to continue.
They're not. I mean, I would say that everyone against extinction has a brain defect. Like, we've actually proven this to be true. But so in that sense, we can forgive it, and we understand it. You know, it's not their fault that they're bad people in a sense. But we still have to sort of rally against them, talk to them, and you know, for the people listening, we still have to essentially treat them as if they don't have a brain defect preventing them from understanding.
Okay, how would you achieve a mass extinction without some sort of manipulation or coercion of the population?
I mean, lots of potential ways, but I mean, you know, maybe like if you could delete the universe, right? Then you wouldn't have to coerce people, right? So, you know, there's lots of different ways it could go out.
Okay, and who would decide when or how that would happen? And would your argument be that a mass extinction event that may cause moments of suffering to every living thing is preferable to an existence where some people don't suffer?
You've kind of like gone from two different categories there, because the thing is, you're saying, you know, you're ignoring all of the future beneficiaries of extinction, right?
I suppose my question framing may have been a little bit off. I suppose what I'm trying to ask is, do you accept that there are those that do not suffer? You know, apex predators or some members of humanity, or, you know, things that are at the top of the food chain.
I think every life form suffers, but some of them definitely are happy enough to keep living, right? So yeah, you know, we don't deny that.
Okay, so do you not find the idea of forced extinction quite extreme?
It's an extreme problem.
I can agree entirely that suffering itself is a terrible thing, and, you know, suffering does matter, and everyone should do what they can to reduce suffering. But the bit that I struggle with...
Reducing suffering is the same as not reducing suffering, because it's effectively still allowing suffering, right?
In as much as
if you can
you will never fully eliminate it.
If you can end slavery but choose not to and reduce it a little bit, then it's unacceptable. It's shockingly bad, right? That's very immoral to do, because you're still exploiting the vast majority of them. You've maybe improved some small conditions for a small minority, but that's not fair to the rest, right? And it doesn't even make sense in terms of trying to do the good thing.
Are you not arguing for something that is essentially mass harm on a scale that, you know, a genocide wouldn't cover what you're proposing?
So we are proposing not genocide but euthanasia. So euthanasia is always done in a responsible way. It's done in the most ethical way possible, and it has the highest standards of ethical and moral consideration behind it. right? So it's not going out with a machete. It's trying to do it in the most the best way possible. But the thing is, it's impossible to cause more suffering with extinction than you prevent. Even if you had to, so if the only way was to have total extinction on Earth was to torture every human for 1,000 years, it would still be better than the alternative. It would still have less suffering than the alternative.
It's something that you know, it's a very difficult thing to argue against because you're reducing every person's consciousness and, you know, innate desire to exist down
No,
to something that
it's
if you exist,
difficult.
you cause
It's
suffering.
difficult to argue against because we're saying that it's unacceptable to keep exploiting others, and that we should have a zero tolerance policy on suffering and exploitation. That's why it's difficult to argue against, because that is the core of it, and it is just a fact, right? It's objectively, morally true that making others suffer for benefit is wrong. It's a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with you
People try.
in that regard.
People definitely do try.
Well, it's been interesting picking your brain, James.
Anytime, Connor. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Good chat. All right. Maybe you guys are starting to see that it is impossible to disagree with extinction, because you have to essentially say, yes, I'm a terrible person, and I'm happy for babies to be tortured. And, you know, as soon as you say that, everyone's going to see that you're not a serious person, you're not a moral or good person. So, you know, it's not some gotcha, okay? Extinction is the ultimate and only moral position. It's the only one that says we should prioritize those that suffer. That's what it's about, okay? It's not about extinction. It's not about wiping out life or watching the world burn. It's about, quite literally, prioritizing the sufferers, okay? It's about compassion. It's about empathy. It's about doing the right thing. And the right thing does mean prioritizing the sufferers, okay? Their safety from forced existence and from extreme suffering is more important than the privilege of the small minority of selfish humans. Difficult to argue against that. Impossible to argue against that, really. You know, people in the chat have said recently, oh, he's lost every debate today, but I'd say I've won every debate today. I would say that actually I win every single debate I ever do on these streams. The thing is, you can't lose a debate when you're arguing for defending victims from suffering at the cost of the privilege of the selfish. Like, there's no way to lose that debate. You know, it's literally impossible. So, you know, I'm good at debating and I know about extinction, but, you know, it's kind of like cheat mode on, guys, because, you know, again, every other position by default says it is acceptable for babies to be tortured to death in unlimited numbers for my privilege, right? That is the default status quo position. It is morally reprehensible, disgusting, exploitative, and evil. Okay, so there's not some sort of like difficulty in arguing for a suffering-free world, which is what we're doing. It's not a difficult thing to argue for, okay? What is difficult to argue for is what these people that come on and say, surely we can find some way to justify babies being tortured to death for our benefit. Surely there must be a way we can use, you know, terms like qualia and stuff like that to confuse people into not realizing that it's extremely evil and wrong to exploit others. So, it's the ideology and the morality that wins every time. It's the thing is, it is a rational movement. It's based on logic. Okay, it's based on rationality. We avoid bias. Okay, and again, if you want to debate us in long form, we will do it. Okay, we will arrange it. We are more than happy to have a 60-minute, 90-minute, 2-hour-long debate with you. We'll do it on YouTube, on live. And the thing is, everyone that does, you can go and check our lives, our debates on YouTube, search Pro Extinction on YouTube, go on the live section and watch our debates. They all get absolutely annihilated. Hello.
Hey, yeah, everything you're saying is absolutely deranged, bro. I'm happy to debate you and just go at it.
Go for it.
So,
we'll see who's deranged by the end. Okay,
begin. Are you one of those suffering babies you're talking about?
Is this your serious beginning to this debate?
That's my serious beginning. Are you one of those
cringe?
suffering
It's a bit cringe. Chat, put some L's in the chat for this guy.
Are you or are you not? It's a very simple question. You're talking about suffering babies. Are you one of them?
Molian, do better. Okay, you have been booted from the extinction zone. Obviously, I'm not a baby. If you got a serious question, I'm happy to take it. Although I do get told I have a baby face. Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. So what's the argument that therefore they're suffering, everything should be extinct?
Yeah. It's more important to defend victims of extreme suffering than it is to defend the privilege of the lucky ones, right?
Is there a premise too?
There's lots of ways to think about it, I guess, but essentially, here's a good way. If you...
I just asked for a premise too, that's it. You just told me how good of a debater you are, yet you can't form an argument?
Well...
Modus ponens, mos tonens, at least.
To approach it, you see. But if we can get started for sure. So, no one should have to suffer, especially for the benefit of others, okay? Total extinction is the only way to guarantee that no more life forms are forced into a life that they didn't want, didn't ask for, and is filled essentially with extreme suffering, right? It's the worst thing that can happen. So we should make sure it doesn't happen. It should be the priority. We should prioritize those that suffer the worst in this world, whereas that's not what we do at the minute. We have a system that says it's acceptable to exploit others, it's acceptable to impose life on innocent animals and to then torture them for our benefit and our privilege, okay? So we have a zero tolerance policy on victims and suffering, and that means total extinction, because it is the only way to guarantee that there's no more victims of forced life and extreme suffering. Most people assume that life should continue, but there's actually no reason for it. All it does is generate victims and suffering.
Define suffering.
Experiences that you want to avoid, pain, mental pain. There's lots of different types of suffering.
Experiences you want to avoid. So is a child going to school when he doesn't want to go to school suffering?
Yeah.
Yo, are you slow?
Well, do you think it's impossible for a child to suffer?
That's a straw man of what I said.
Is it though?
What was the question I asked you?
You said there's a child that goes to school but doesn't want to be there. Are they suffering? Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, can you tell me how so? Or, sorry, how does it follow from the fact that they don't want to be there, that they're therefore suffering?
So, boredom, anxiety, discomfort, there's lots of ways that children suffer at school.
Now being bored is suffering?
Boredom is a serious form of suffering.
Yeah, this is just a very, very idiosyncratic way of defining suffering. Why is this a definition I should accept?
If you want a definition, you can just Google it.
It's not what I asked. Why is this a definition that I should accept?
Why do you need a definition?
Yeah, because semantics are important when it involves in a debate. Now, why is this a definition I should accept?
If you have a brain, you should accept it, right? I mean, it's like saying, why should I accept that 1 + 1 = 2? Okay, I'm not going to educate you from the ground up. You know, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of everyone on the stream's time. If you want a definition of suffering, Google it. But, you know, you shouldn't need a definition of suffering. If you can see a sadist torturing an animal and you have to wonder whether or not is that suffering? There's something wrong with you, right? And it shouldn't be taken seriously. You should just go and Google definition of suffering and, yeah, educate yourself before wasting everyone's time on stream. Hello.
Yo.
How's it going?
Good. So why should he had accepted your definition?
It's not my definition. I'm just, you know, let's just use the Merriam-Webster definition. It doesn't matter what the definition is.
What the hell? No, I mean, but why should he accept it, though? I'm not asking you about the definition.
I don't care if he accepts it.
Well, you care because, I mean, that would lead to a more, you know, congruent argument or, you know, debate with someone.
No, because you can't have a serious conversation with someone that's asking extremely ludicrous and time-wasting questions.
No, I think you know, those type of debaters, they're pretty smart. They really dissect the argument, you know, in a way that most people really have a hard time like debating, you know.
No,
so
actually,
it seemed like you were you were running a little bit.
I think you're confused. Actually, what he was doing is a very common tactic of making appeals to impossible standards. Okay, so effectively they use impractical standards and they force confusion onto people, right, by having an absurdly complex way of saying something that could just be said simply. So it's a tactic of manipulation and dishonesty, basically.
I don't think he was being dishonest, but I mean,
he was definitely being dishonest.
Manipulation is definitely a part of the.
Can you tell me why you need a definition of suffering? Like, is it not obvious what it is?
Why you need it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can define terms and you can figure out.
Do we have to define every single term that we use?
The bottom of someone's argument.
Do we have to define every single term that we use?
No,
or can we just have a normal conversation like adults?
Well, I mean, he was trying to go somewhere with it, basically.
He was trying to troll, basically, right?
No, that guy wasn't a troll. He's just like a debate bro.
He was definitely trolling. Okay. You don't need. If I ask for a definition every time we use a basic word, there's not going to be any serious sort of conversation, right? So people that don't speak English, you know, we have a German debater. He does live streams. You know, if English isn't your first language, then let's not waste everyone's time, right?
I think English was that guy's first language.
I'm not convinced, right? If he's never heard of suffering, doesn't know what it is, I would definitely say it's not his first language.
Well, that wasn't. No, he just said, why does he need to accept it? Wasn't that the question?
No, he wanted my definition of suffering, and then he wanted to dissect it in a completely ridiculous and unnecessary way and a waste of everyone's time.
I mean, it's not really up to you to tell people why they're wasting their time or not. I mean, they could have found
it. Absolutely up to me. It's my stream. If you want to waste everyone's time, go and make your own live stream, right? So it's
it's TikTok stream. You're just the middleman. You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm the host.
He's the middleman. You kind of look like somebody. Who do you look like?
I'm the
Where are
host
you
of the
from?
stream. You know, if you want to waste everyone's time, go and make your own stream, right? It is simple. Okay, the queue is now empty. Hopefully we have a more serious challenger. But again, you know, needing a definition of suffering is a mental gymnastic performance, right? If you think that it's questionable whether or not a baby being tortured to death suffers, then you are trolling, okay? We don't need a definition to understand that torturing others is wrong, babies being eaten alive is a bad thing, and that they are suffering from it. Like, yeah, you know, you're not a serious person, basically. All right, the queue is still empty. Anyone that has questions, let's do it. Let's talk. So this stream is really looking to get new activists and to grow the movement. We want more people that agree with having a suffering-free world, okay? More people to join the movement that agree that no one should have to suffer and who understand that that is the best thing in the world possible, is a suffering-free world, okay? It's the priority, it's the most important thing. If you have to have extreme amounts of suffering and torture to sustain your privileged existence, then it's not worth doing, okay? It's not morally acceptable, it's not good. It's obvious, right? Let's continue taking some comments while we wait for the queue to fill up. Do you want to debate or don't you? I do, but I'm not going to be bullied into definition trolling and, you know, qualia and all that nonsense, right? So, like, even the philosophy books, okay? I have actually read a few philosophy books. But the thing is, it's all just nonsense, right? It's gibberish. When people read these books or read the Bible, whatever it is, and they're like, "Oh, this is really, I'm kind of struggling to get this, right? You know, just, am I stupid or is the book really smart? What's going on?" It was written by unintelligent people that didn't know how to get their ideas out in an easy to understand way. You know, if you can't convey your message simply, then either your message is wrong or you're just not good at messaging, okay? So, and these philosophy books, they are just like, it's just like logic for fun, basically. There's no like serious kind of focus from them. Realistically, in a world with extreme suffering and, you know, innocents being tortured, only suffering-focused ethics make sense and are worth looking into. You know, how are you going to spend your time? Are you going to lick the boots of the rich people in the world, or are you going to try and help those that are suffering? Okay, so it's not hard, guys. Hello.
YOLO.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you have an argument for the proposition that we should end suffering.
Yeah, it's wrong to make or allow others to suffer for our benefit.
Okay, and wrong to suffer or make or allow those to
Wrong to
benefit
allow
for one's
or make
benefit.
others suffer.
Okay, why?
Because it's bad for them.
How does some action being bad for an agent equate to it being wrong for an agent? That's a normative ethical claim, right? That you have to make a tie or connection to those two hypotheses.
But I mean, that's just obvious, isn't it?
Not to me, it's not.
So you have no morality?
Nope, never said that. I take a view that harm might not be a wrong-making feature in every case. I'm
I'm a virtue ethicist, but the type of virtue ethicist I am is an agent-based ethicist, not an outcome-based ethicist. So I don't know why a view about some action being harmful for a person is the type of thing that's wrong for a person. That's, again, a strong normative ethical claim that needs to be justified.
Well, like I was just saying, we don't need complex terms because it's a simple issue, really, right? It's if you make someone else suffer, it's bad for them, and it's wrong, right? If anything's going to
Okay.
be wrong, then it's going to be making others suffer, okay? So it's
Okay,
very
now,
it's simple logic, it's obvious logic, it's just common sense, right?
okay. There's three different things to analyze in that argument. The first thing is, let's give you an analogical argument for the opposing hypothesis, which is just, are you lagging or am I lagging?
Let me check my Wi-Fi, just a couple seconds.
Okay. Because his screen is freezing for me once in a while. I don't know if it was just me.
It's probably me, but I have upgraded my internet recently. It should be relatively reliable.
Okay, this is a little bit better. Yeah, okay, cool. So, to go back to the main point, the analogical view for the opposing hypothesis, which is just being, do you take the view that we should slaughter newborn children if it's the case that they allow suffering or they're the type of entity that's to suffer in the future as well?
So we wouldn't use the term slaughter. So as extinctionists, we prefer euthanasia, right? It's the more ethical way to go about things. It's not slaughtering, right?
So you take the view that we should put people to sleep and then unalive them?
So essentially our plan is to have an animal-free planet. Okay, so we're talking about animal euthanasia, having no animal population on the planet by euthanasia. And then essentially we have to see if there's life in the universe that, the universe could be full of victims that need our help as well, in the same way that animals do. And then finally, humanity is the last, because we're the only ones that can help others. So, would we use euthanasia? Yes.
So you think there should be like a factory farm type of thing for all agents that are alive?
Not really like a factory farm. I can't say exactly what the optimum way to go about extinction is, because we have to research that and develop that method, right? The movement's very small at the minute. We need more resources, more people on board before we can say what the absolute best method is, right? That science and technology still needs to be developed.
Okay. Now, let's take the view where oh, sorry, 1 second, I just got a text. Never mind, not too important. But let's take the view that suffering is wrong. Okay, I could agree with that. But how do you come to a conclusion? Hold on, I just said I could agree with that. It's like a thing to grant for a type of argument.
I gave you too much credit.
Let's take the view that suffering could be wrong. Okay. Now, how does that premise lead you to a conclusion that the type of thing is morally wrong? Or how does it lead you to a conclusion, rather a more specific conclusion, that we should exterminate life?
So the thing is, to reaching the extinctionist position, it's not something like that you read in a philosophy book. It's something that comes about as essentially wanting to do the right thing for the world and wanting a perfect world. So it's about saying, asking those questions. What is the right world to have? What's right? What's wrong? Okay. And so, if you're looking after the world and you're responsible for it, then eventually, the conclusion is the sufferers take priority over the privileged. Okay. Preventing and keeping them safe from extreme suffering is more important than protecting the privilege of the minority.
Okay. I'm still not entirely sure how that got or gathered you to the conclusion, but let's grant something of the sort, and let's take a view something like this.
Well, let me just answer that real quick, like really quickly. So how I came to the conclusion was the movement reached out to me and they said, we're working to end all suffering, have a suffering-free world. No one should have to suffer. Extinction is the way to do it. And I said, wow, a world with no suffering, sign me up, right? That is the best thing, the most necessary thing, the priority, the most important thing.
Okay. Now I'm going to give you an opposing view, a direct opposing view. Okay. So premise 1, if some action X deprives some agent of a future of valuable experiences, Y, then the action is prima facie morally wrong. Now, the action X where, or what is happening is the extinction of a humankind, or the extinction of a kind that has these future experiences. I take the view that that's prima facie morally wrong.
Now, the thing is, any harm is bad, but it doesn't make it necessarily wrong. When a police officer tackles a criminal, it might be, again, taking away their future pleasures that you were mentioning, but that doesn't make it wrong.
No, I'm talking more specifically about the philosophy of death, right? The thing that I'm hyperfixating on is when some agent dies and loses out on all these valuable experiences they otherwise would have had. That's the thing that's morally wrong. I'm not talking about a frustration of interest that somebody might have where they did something morally wrong in their life and they have to pay repercussions for it in like a prison or reprehensive system. I'm talking more specifically about the philosophy or the harm of death, those entailments.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they do have value, pleasure and, all of those positive things. They do technically have value, definitely. But when you're faced with a choice of, essentially, to kind of put it in a hypothetical almost, to take someone out of heaven in order to save someone from hell, right? It is the right thing to do, even if it does deny someone their privilege. The thing is that
which premise do you disagree with?
Suffering is more important, right?
Let's get a bit more clear. Which premise do you disagree with?
Well, just to be clear, I'd say my position is that providing safety from extreme suffering is more important than providing unequal opportunity for pleasure.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, that doesn't answer the question though. I'm just trying to make the conversation very linear. I want to see which premise directly you reject, such that we can have a conversation about it. Yeah, premise 1 is, if an action X deprives some agent of a future like ours, then that action X is prima facie morally wrong.
I already addressed that. So it would be
then
bad.
Premise 2 is
the denial of
premise 2 is
bad for the recipient, right? But it doesn't necessarily make it wrong.
Okay, hold on. And then premise 2, the action X does deprive the agent of a future like ours, therefore the action is prima facie morally wrong. I'm asking you more specifically which premise you reject of those two. And whether or not you reject a premise, we can go over those and talk about it.
I mean, I reject all of it, really.
You reject the second premise?
Yeah.
If some action, or the action X deprives it of a future like ours, you reject that?
Yeah.
So you want to say that a human being that's living right now in the world doesn't have a future like ours? They don't have the type of thing that's going to have experiences in the future if you let them live? You reject that?
You didn't finish that sentence, so you need to kind of tie it together there before I can reject it.
You reject that humans have these types of experiences that are special if they aren't unalived? Like hopes, dreams, and desires?
No, I don't reject that they'll lose that.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm saying, do you reject the view that they do have hopes, dreams, and desires?
Surely you would agree that I would have to be insane to reject the idea that people have hopes and desires. So I'm finding it a silly question.
Well, the issue is you said previously you reject both of the premises. And if you reject both of the premises, the entailment...
I'm sorry, Kaizen, I'm not trying to be rude, but I think you're just wasting everyone's time, right? If you can't speak directly and have a normal conversation, then you're wasting my time and everyone else's time. No one's going to understand what you're talking about. Okay? Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How's it going?
Going good, man. So, I'm actually very familiar with this philosophy. I used to talk to Ethelists. I don't know if you're an Ethelist.
No,
But
we're against Ethelism because Ethelism, the part of the ideology is that they're against activism and organized activism. So it's about lamenting life instead of helping life.
okay, fascinating. Um, so just to also get my standpoint here very clearly, I'm pro-vitalist. I'm pro, I don't want to say pro-life because that's more so within the standpoint of pregnancy and abortion and stuff like that, but I am pro, existence to the highest degree that you could possibly
So you're
think of it.
pro-life imposition, basically.
Yes, yes. So,
Why?
what's exactly the argument here that you're coming from to say that there should be no life?
Yeah, so it's the only way to provide 100% safety from being forced to exist into a life that you didn't ask for and didn't want, and from extreme suffering.
Okay, well, if I didn't even ask for the life, I could still choose to want the life. I mean, it's like a gift.
If you're lucky, yeah. If you're very lucky.
Well, most people choose to live.
No one chooses to be born. Okay.
Well, no.
And the thing is,
continue living.
The thing is, you're only talking about the lucky ones. Okay, so you are ignoring the unlucky ones, and you're also ignoring all. You're also ignoring all of the animals, right? Who can't consent.
No, animals. Well, one, animals could also choose to keep living, and by their own survival instincts, they do choose to keep living.
It's not a choice, though, right? If you're being chased by a murderous animal, you don't choose whether or not you run. You just run.
No, I literally have the choice to stop running. But it's within my survival instincts to keep moving because I don't want to die.
Because of those overwhelming survival instincts that you don't have the choice.
I do have the choice. People who are very depressed.
No, the thing is,
could get them.
Choice is an illusion.
Depression could literally override the instinct to survive. That's how suicide happens.
We don't see delineation from standard animal behaviors, okay? We don't see them just choosing to be eaten, all right? It's not a real thing. Free will is a myth. It's a fantasy. Free will is an illusion, effectively, right?
You could literally prove free will. It's not a myth.
You can literally prove it doesn't exist.
Well, okay, James. If I were to say that you first needed to have a agent that is with outside, physical reaction to react to a physical reaction, I don't know if I'm phrasing this properly.
You mean cause and effect, right?
Cause and effect, maybe, but it's more so about potentials. A singular cause could have multiple effects, but who's choosing that effect?
Well, look, before life existed, right? The planets formed, the stars formed. It's all natural processes, okay? There was no choice involved, right? A star didn't choose to become a star, and life didn't choose to start existing on Earth.
Are you ascribing conscious agency to stars and planets?
No, I'm saying that they have.
So then, of course, a star can't choose to become a star because it doesn't have a conscious agent.
Okay, so effectively, you're saying that anyone who doesn't like it can just opt out. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, is that true for babies?
Well, when they grow up, they can.
Okay, but not all of them get to grow up. In fact, most of them don't.
Well, okay. When you want to talk about morality rates with fetuses, what are we talking about? Most of them. Are we talking about here in America? Or are we just talking about like overseas abroad? Are we talking about across
So
species?
we're talking about the total population. So, and that
Of like
includes
across
animals.
species,
So that, yeah.
this okay, across species, sure. Most of them don't get to grow up. But
Okay.
those that do grow up, and even that we see in baby species across animals, they have extreme survival instincts to not die.
Yeah, I'm not disputing survival instinct, okay? But in fact, I'm saying it is that survival instinct that makes it so that you can't opt out, right? Animals aren't intelligent enough to make that decision, okay?
Animals have enough of the agency to understand that a survival instinct isn't a program. You do understand this. A survival instinct is the bare desire to want to survive. That is what it. No, I'm like serious. It's not. You don't code in actions.
So you
To
think that
survival.
animals make rational decisions?
Yes, they do all the time.
Okay.
No, that's not my opinion. Like even if we take the animal behind you, an elephant, do you not think elephants make rational decisions? Like the most empathetic species with like the longest term of memories, they don't make rational decisions. They don't have cognition. That's ridiculous. Of course they do.
They make some, yeah, okay, look, they make some rational decisions, yes, but they're not fully rational.
No, now that's, of course, that's like a different thing. If we're talking about
No, it's
fully
not a
rational,
different
but
thing.
they
This
have
is
rationality in them.
foundation, fundamental to the conversation.
Yes, it's fundamental to the conversation, but we have to understand that with each of these beings, we're dealing with a creature that has rationality. That's not something that we could even debate. They're rational enough to understand their base
You think
desires.
mosquitoes are rational creatures, right?
I don't think they're as rational as, say, a human, but they have base rationality. They they know where would be less likely for them to die and where would be more likely for
What
them
about
to die.
those who are born with brain damage, like severe brain damage?
Severe brain damage? Like, what are we talking about? Like, they're completely incapable of operating?
No, let's say that they're very tiny capability of operating, but basically they're going to die because they can't operate properly.
Then for cases like that, I'm okay. Like, I'm not, again, what I said in the beginning, I'm not against abortion. I'm not against.
My point is that you are essentially saying, yes, the vast majority of life is in extreme suffering, but some very small minority will be able to make a rational decision to do self-harm and to end their suffering in a cruel and horrible way.
Okay,
right?
you made some presumptions there about me. I don't believe.
I'm getting kind of bored of it, to be honest. I think we've debunked him. Basically, we can move on. Hello, Adam. How's it going?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
All right, so I agree with you on the free will argument. I don't believe in it. I'm more of a determinist as well. But one thing you said, the only solution to extreme suffering is basically a pro-extinction movement.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true. I think there are other solutions to extreme suffering, particularly for humans. Wouldn't it be, even though they're far-fetched, wouldn't it be better to focus on limiting extreme suffering rather than promoting pro-extinction?
So the thing is, extinction is the fastest way to end and prevent suffering. So anything else is unfair to the victims.
Well, it's the fastest way, but if there's a way you could like limit it.
If there's a way
society.
you could limit it, but then you're still allowing victims, right? So it's unfair to them. You're essentially saying it's acceptable to exploit others, to make them suffer, to torture them, because we can benefit, right? So no, that's wrong.
So the argument is like, if you could in society somehow limit extreme suffering, it would be on the backs of people in the modern day who are kind of experiencing that extreme suffering and down the road in the future.
No,
if they reach that future.
What I'm saying is that only 100% safety for 100% of life is acceptable, okay? And there's no other way to achieve that without extinction. So anything other than extinction is condemning others to suffer for fun, right? It's not okay. Those beings don't exist just so that you can torture them for benefits. They don't deserve it. It's wrong. And only by having a zero tolerance policy on, exploitation and suffering, can we have any sort of good system or fair system or right system.
You got to think about that. I mean, I see the logical consistency over there. Just my viewpoint is recreate, like, there is extreme suffering. Some people are extremely suffering, and let's not even talk about the animal kingdom. But that you could recognize it means that you have the ability or possibility to change it, right? Or to recreate things so that it doesn't exist anymore. But I also see your viewpoint. It's the fastest way. And there's no saying that even if you recreate things, I mean, that's failed spectacularly in the past, that it would eliminate it.
The problem is, Adam, is that suffering and extreme suffering is just simply too extreme and terrible to allow, and too extreme and terrible to ever be okay to exploit.
Well, I do think some suffering that can be overcome is not an issue.
Right, but the majority of the suffering is suffering that can't be overcome.
Okay, yeah, that's. I just wanted to kind of poke your brain on that.
If someone gets cancer, they're not benefiting from it, right?
Yeah, so that particular individual wouldn't benefit. Yeah, that makes sense.
Thanks for coming on, Adam, as always.
Thanks.
And as always, if you want to learn more about the movement, you can check out our website, proextinction.com, all one word, proextinction.com. We have a basic FAQ, which is pretty good. We have a full FAQ, which is quite lengthy and detailed. And we also have our manifesto, and also we have links to our Discord. We would love for everyone to join the Discord. Come and ask us questions. It's not me. I didn't even make the Discord. Again, I didn't make this movement. I'm just one activist of many, representing the victims of forced existence and extreme suffering, representing safety for all, representing the billions of years of future victims on Earth who are relying on extinction, future victims of torture who their torture can only be prevented by total extinction. People have a very sort of warped animalistic mentality without realizing it. But the continuation of life and the species, it's not necessary. There's no actual logical reason to do it. There's nothing good that comes out of it apart from, more intense pleasure for the privileged oppressors at the top. The vast majority of life, over 99%, are born as wild animals into nature with no conditions or the worst conditions for the vast majority of them. And technically for the vast majority of life on this planet, they are born into extreme suffering and they will be eaten alive as babies or children. It's not a good thing. It's not an acceptable thing. Exploiting others and allowing their suffering will never be acceptable. Hello.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. I think we talked one time, but I just wanted to ask one more question. I was curious. Like, how do I say it? So essentially, like, you are like holding this to the position again that basically, when I say this, tell me if I'm right or wrong. Let me think how to word this to you. Basically, you're saying because suffering exists, it would be better if humans don't exist, right?
It's all life So animals should go first because they can't do it themselves. And, if there's space life, maybe we could do that as well. And then finally, humans.
Gotcha. So let me rephrase the question. Because suffering exists, life shouldn't exist.
Yeah. There's more to it than that, obviously, but I guess I could say yes.
How do you feel about medicine?
It's not enough.
No, what I'm asking is, like, medicines have side effects, right?
Yeah. Not
Should
always.
Should we ban all medicine?
No.
Why?
It seems like the best thing for now.
Wow. Okay, wait. We're getting somewhere. Great. I love that honest answer. Okay. Before I continue, do you have any rebuttal to that?
To what?
What I just asked you. I said, does medicine has side effects, right? And you said, I asked you, should we ban all medicine? You said no, because medicine is the best answer for now. When you say for now, what do you mean?
Well, there's no reason to ban medicine.
Why?
Because it does more good than harm.
Okay, great. So okay, we're getting somewhere here. Okay. It does more great than harm. If somebody is suffering and they can take medicine to stop the suffering, that's a net positive, right?
It depends on how you look at it, but let's say yes.
Okay. So if it's a net positive, if the medicine stops the suffering, we now have solved one of many different ways to actually solve suffering. So let's say we go 100 years in the future. Let me propose to you a hypothetical, if you don't mind. Is that okay? You know what hypotheticals or no?
Thing is, medicine doesn't solve suffering, right?
Oh, I'm saying it's also. I said one of many. I said.
The thing is, medicine doesn't solve suffering. It just removes one bad thing, right?
Yeah, it does. That's why I said one of many, okay?
Okay, yeah. All right, sure.
Great. Okay, so the hypothetical I'm going to propose to you is this. Let's say in 150 years from now, AI is able to essentially extinguish suffering to the extent where basically there is no pain from cancers, things like that. Would you still choose today to essentially end all human life?
Yeah, it's funny. I've just put out a video on my channel about this, and basically the answer is extinction still wins. Okay.
Okay.
So, and here's the answer. Firstly, if you reduce suffering or delay the ending of suffering, then it's unfair to the victims. Okay. And so the video I made, and you can watch it if you want, it literally answers this exact question. If we had an extinctionist world government, or, the world is extinctionist tomorrow, would we be able to solve suffering without extinction? But the thing is that there is no way to provide 100% safety from suffering, to cure all diseases, to, account for all predation, starvation, natural disasters, all of this stuff, without extinction, right? The world is too dangerous and complicated to be able to match the level of safety that non-existence provides. So again, you would need effectively some sort of genetic modifier that could perfectly adapt to every animal, including their uniqueness, their mutations, their age, all of that stuff, and it would have to basically make them invincible, give them it's effectively magic, right? Whereas extinction is already possible. We already have many different forms of euthanasia. It's fast, it's effective, and it guarantees 100% safety from suffering. Whereas even that genetic modifier could go wrong somehow, right? Or someone in the future could undo it, or use that advancement in medicine to find advancements for torture.
Okay. I mean, just because something is possible doesn't make it better, though. I mean, because I'm directly responding off of your extinction is already a possible, right? I mean, yeah, cars can drive off cliffs, man. That doesn't mean it's a good idea. I mean,
but it is better. But it is better because it's faster, because the victims need the relief as fast as possible.
So let's say the Earth continued to go on for 100,000 years, okay?
Yep.
And in 100 years, the suffering, in this hypothetical, again, I'm going to ask it one more time. I guess I have to revise it. In 100 years, AI takes over and all suffering becomes almost impossible because AI basically, I mean, there's a movie about this too that's coming out, but AI is basically the judge. AI takes care of all the pain. It cures diseases. You're saying that because in this moment we can end that suffering for the next 100 years, it kind of like can't, it doesn't, the actual 100,000 years thereafter doesn't matter. I'm just confused. I mean, like, this kind of puts you in a little bit of a moral dilemma, doesn't it?
It's a really good question, actually. So I appreciate that because I haven't had that question many times, or maybe ever. So really great question.
No problem.
But basically, we have a zero tolerance policy on exploitation and allowing suffering for benefit. So now, again, I would personally like to steelman your argument and say, it's not just AI providing a higher level of safety. Let's imagine that AI has created, heaven with a 100% guarantee of safety. It would still be wrong if it takes 100 more years to get there, because all you're doing is prioritizing. You're allowing suffering for no need, right? The thing is, extinction actually already accounts for the positives and allowing for them. So let me explain that. The thing is, especially with universal extinction, space extinction, right? But even with just animals on the Earth, it will probably take hundreds of years, maybe thousands, okay? So in that sense, humanity will continue on for a long time, and the mission will take a long time. Now, the thing is, again, the victims and their suffering takes priority, but if at some point during our mission, during all of this time, we can effectively make heaven, then we can do that, right? But the beings in the meantime don't need to exist and don't need to suffer to still protect that potential technology that can make heaven in the future. So, that opportunity isn't necessarily lost by doing extinction. But the suffering of those in the meantime is prevented, that needless suffering. But there is only the only acceptable standard is 100% safety from suffering, and 99% safety isn't good enough. It's not fair to the victims when it goes wrong.
Okay. All right. I mean, I see what I do see the points that's being made. Interesting. Okay, because like for me it would be like, I guess, like, let me just like give you a quick idea of my worldview. I guess, like, so I feel like it put me in a moral dilemma, whereas like you're essentially saying that I kind of see what you're saying. Okay, so you're saying by ending the suffering now, you don't allow another 100 years of suffering, even if after that there is some sort of AI system with this perfect world. Okay. I mean, it's actually kind of a good point. Okay, for fun. It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, I do see the point. So I basically be like, okay, non-existence isn't suffering at all. By allowing another 100 years of suffering, you're allowing unnecessary suffering so that people can exist. Which, sure, existence with no suffering is great, but also non-existence isn't suffering either. So, all right.
And the final piece to the puzzle, and extremely important piece that we shouldn't ignore, is that pleasure and privilege and the heaven-like experience, it can never justify exploitation and suffering. The thing is that when you actually understand how bad suffering is, it's so extreme, so insanely terrible, that it's not something that can be used and exploited for good, right? That's not doing good, that's doing harm.
Sure. Yeah, Interesting. Okay, I'll think on that, man. I'm gonna, like I said, I have you followed, so I'll come back again and I'll watch you again. I just want to stop in again and talk to you about those couple points I had. Thank you, man.
No, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Take care, man. Take care. Bye bye.
I'm going to take a bathroom break because I've been on for an hour or two, maybe get some food. We're having some really great conversations today, so I will be back as soon as I can. In the meantime, if you want to come and chat with us, Google search Abolish Suffering Discord. It's the first link. You can come and chat to me and all of the other activists. There's quite a few of us, and we'd love to talk to you, get you on board with the movement, and maybe you can do activism with us to achieve a suffering-free world. Yeah, I'll be back soon. Thank you very much.